And then under this, to remove these, I think portions of this have a cement pad. I'm not sure if the guy just put it on top of loam or we dug it out and put gravel down. I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Where was that again?
This, underneath.
Oh, what it's underneath?
Yeah, underneath.
So you're not
there.
sure what's there?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you just put it on top of the loam. But nonetheless, what I do is I call for 6 inches to remove the concrete and then put down 6 inches of loam, or if it's already there, then, go with what's there. Leave the rest of the vegetation that they can in here, and then supplement it with some plantings in this area here. And then when they're done is to put either a low boulder wall or some boulders, along this 25 foot to help delineate it for future owners. They'll know something's going on.
Good, I was gonna
What
ask
size were
about
they?
that.
Excuse me?
The boulders, what size?
I didn't call it the size. It's, I just called for a small stone wall or boulders there. Try to do it and then, not too overwhelming of a way, but enough that the homeowners would know something's going on there, because obviously these guys are, they want to fix the property up and then.
Yeah, I think our experience has been they need to be somewhat sizable. If you're not doing a stone wall, then the boulders need to be sizable so they're not easily moved.
By 2 people,
Yeah.
or a yard tractor or something of that nature.
So 2 by 2, 3 by 3?
Yeah, something
Yeah, I'd say
that
3.
has a little bit of weight to it. We've done that, we've done split rail fence, different things. Like we said.
Split rail fence, I think, would look nicer, but,
How long it'll last is another.
but this should last for a good amount of time, but they're easier to pull up if somebody wanted to than the boulders, so it doesn't really matter whatever you split rail fence or boulders.
And then was there, were you going to go on the other, I missed it because I was trying to get this up from anybody. On the other side where you added the wetland delineation, was there some debris over there that was able to reach, or is that not on your property? So you
Well, it's
can't
really
do
not
that?
on the property,
Okay.
so, and this over in here, looks like this was a town dumping ground for a while. I mean, there's stumps down there, there's couches or mattresses,
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it was really bad.
car
You
seats.
could have remodeled your whole house with what
There
was
was
already
a
there.
shed on that side of the property that.
Yeah, a little further
Yeah,
back.
those are called to be removed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like an old storage trailer, like an insulated,
And was a decision made about the driveway, if they were gonna pave it? or
they're gonna
leave it?
gravel it,
Oh, they are, okay.
just keep it gravel. This is actually a portion that the state highway layout is significantly off the edge of pavement. And I believe, I'm just speculating here, that this was probably the old road and there was a curve in it. I know what they did is they straightened it out here to get rid of it. And so this is probably the old road bed. That's why there's a good 30 to 40 feet between his property line and the pavement on the highway.
So I also missed it, sorry, was there a planting plan then, did you say?
Yeah, he came up with, we looked at New England, there's already some existing trees in there, so we're gonna, along the wetland, and behind, there's some trees that are probably this big that are coming up, so we're gonna leave all those. And then supplement it with 4 red maple trees, 2 American hazelnut plants, 2 high bush blueberry plants, and 3 swamp rose bush plants.
What is the swamp rose bush? What's the?
We got it out of New England wetlands.
Do you have the Latin there too?
I don't have the Latin with there.
Swamp azalea?
Swamp azalea wouldn't grow there. I mean, they
It's too
got
shaded? Well,
Well,
swamp azalea grows shaded.
it's not a wetland, so you got to, the high bush blueberry can go either way, the red maples can go either way.
But what's it, the soil like? What's it?
Yeah, did you look at the soils? Because we didn't look at the soils back there. It was
Well, it's
too-
upland soil, so.
You looked at the soils when you did the delineation. I know there was a pretty distinct bank.
Yeah, I didn't check in this area there, but the restoration is is an upland area. It's not actual wetland, so swamp azalea,
What about the groundwater elevation?
I would guesstimate it to be 2.5 feet below grade.
And what was the other tree besides red maple?
High bush
Hazelnut.
blueberries, hazelnut.
Hazelnut.
Hazelnut, if it's upland soil, hazelnut.
Yeah. So I think we need
Hazelnut,
to figure out what the
and
swamp
If it's
rose is.
upland soil.
Yeah.
You said it's in more of an upland soil than.
Rosa palustris, palustris.
Okay.
And what's it saying?
It's a perennial shrub up to 7 feet tall, is native to eastern United States. Multi-branch shrub with the branches arcing gracefully. Blah, blah, blah. Occurs along stream banks and swamps and marshes.
So maybe that wouldn't grow there either. If you're saying
Well,
something
there is a
so-
bank.
Banks.
It's an intermittent stream.
It is
Oh.
generally found growing on bald cypress knees or exposed down logs. It grows best in slightly acidic, wet to moist soils in partial shade or full sunlight. Well, that's quite the spectrum. That's, I mean,
Did you call it the size too?
Did he send you an email?
No.
He was gonna send you an email and he had the cost of it and everything else.
No, I
so-
never got that.
Okay. So I think, I don't have that. I mean, I can,
I'll double check. I don't remember
I
seeing it.
think he said he was
under
gonna send it to
Chad?
you. Yeah, Chad, but he said he was gonna send it to you, but I don't know if that,
So.
4 to 6 foot tall maple trees, red maples, American hazelnut 3 to 4 feet tall, three swamp rose bushes 3 to 4 feet tall, and 2 high bush blueberries 3 to 4 foot tall.
Okay, so you've got the quantity on your
I got the
thing.
quantity on there, yeah.
And the size?
I didn't put the size, I just put the quantity on the plan here.
Yeah, so we'll need to get the size,
Yep.
because either we'll need to specify it in the order or refer to something. And then he was gonna get the costs, so that then we could come up with a cost estimate. Is there anything else you guys think you wanted? I mean, it's pretty much like what we talked about in the field. I know Janet didn't see it and Brian didn't see it, so,
Something was dead out there today.
oh, lovely.
It stunk. I couldn't figure out where it was, but it's,
we missed
So
it too.
does the
Darn.
Yeah, it was
driveway
just-
gravel?
Probably under that shed.
Is grow associated with it?
it was going down this banking, but there's, there's a lot of, it could have been under something, but it was
Like a
just,
planting plan. Sometimes we've had a flat 5,000.
are you in a butter
We
or
don't have the,
are you a
No,
neighbor?
he's looking at joining the commission.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I should have brought him brownies or cookies or something.
Instead, we have tales of dead things.
Sorry about that.
I know.
let me just search and see if I could have missed it.
Do we want to express a preference for boulders as against split rails? And boulders will probably last till the next owner.
I think it's just the size, you just want
That's it.
to, I'm not
It's just
coming
the
up with
size.
anything from Chad. I do have Carol,
Right,
who had
they are.
emailed me related to this, but it's
I
back in
can
April.
forward this to you right here, and then I can also update the plan with the sizes.
Mhm.
I think they're reasonable sizes.
Yeah, I won't, I don't have internet right here, but,
Okay.
right now, but, yeah, I think if we can get that,
I can,
then maybe for the next meeting, we could, work on an order,
Mhm.
unless there's something else that you guys want to ask or have included. I mean, I haven't looked at the plan really very carefully, but, which is why it's good. We usually leave it open before we draft, while we draft the order, in
Sure.
case there's something
Not a
else.
problem.
So did you have was there a seed mix called out too?
a what?
Were you seeding the area, the disturbed area? Were you taking out-
I put 1 pound of conservation seed mixture.
Okay,
I looked at New England wetland plants, they have a bunch of seed mixtures,
Yeah.
but, a lot of them are for wet retention basins, roadside reclamation. They had one that was a logging trail mix, which,
right.
uh,
If you call them, they're really good about telling you like what they think would work.
yeah.
And sometimes they'll make up a mix, something that, different quantities.
I called the area to be mulched afterwards, and then what they're gonna have to do is. somebody's
Seeded
gonna
and
have-
mulched?
What's that?
Seeded and mulched? Or you didn't call it for seed?
No.
Oh, okay, you were
I called
looking
out
at it.
for, I called out for a conservation mix, seed mixture. So if you go to an Agway, they have a
Oh,
conservation.
mulch with straw, okay, I'm sorry, I was
Mulch,
thinking
yeah,
you were
mulch.
talking mulch, like,
Yeah, mulch with straw.
okay.
And then somebody's gonna have to watch it for the first couple of years, for two reasons. One, that's just kind of keep it going, and two is, there's gonna be money on the line.
Well, that's why we hold our
Right.
escrow on it.
Yeah.
That's why we triple it, and that way,
We weren't seeing a lot of invasives there, right?
Oh, there's tons of invasives.
Was there? Oh, because that
Yes.
usually we require that to be monitored as well. I don't remember
The
on the
whole-
back
in
of
the
the
back,
building.
in the-
On the back of the building?
Maybe not on that side, but down here, there's a lot of honeysuckle, there's multiflora rose.
Yeah, down there, but that's
Back
not
in
jumping
here,
up.
that might be Russian olive, I'm not sure, it's off the property, but it's some invasive back in there.
Autumn olive.
But everything's
Put it in.
basically off the property.
Yeah, and then up in here is in fairly good shape.
Yeah, that's what I didn't remember picking
Yeah.
out a lot.
I mean, I didn't go in there and, there's probably a few multiflora rose, but it's not the thick stuff that you can't.
But so normally we'd ask people to monitor for invasives. If we knew certain species that were particularly there, then we called them out, in particular. But I don't think that's actually happened very
I
much.
don't remember seeing that. Usually it jumps right out at you. The area that you were, where the driveway was coming around, is that being mowed and seeded? Because it kind of circled around?
Yeah, I called that area to be grassed. So that
Right-
area,
right back up to
that area roughly would be still an upland resource area for you folks because it's within 75 feet, but it's about 20, it's about 50 feet roughly from the wetlands.
And it is gravel now.
It's all gravel now.
Yes, I haven't been here in a long time. What is the goal of the project? Just to tear down that building on the
The
left?
goal of the project is this is an existing,
Yeah, it's dilapidated.
yeah, house that's in rough shape.
Okay.
It's got some outbuildings that are even in worse shape.
Yeah.
So what they would like to do is, it's an actually 3-bedroom in the house, but the Board of Health has records from the 50 that it's 2 bedrooms. So they want to renovate the house and go to 4 bedrooms. So it's to put in a new septic system for it. It has 2 cesspools, so they're going to get replaced. And then they want to reconfigure the house a little bit. Currently, there's a driveway that comes around the back, and the garage doors are here. So they're going to redo this portion. It's bad construction. They're going to have a side entry, so cars will come in here.
And then that little building gets torn down.
Yeah, this is going to get
There's a
removed.
shed over here too.
Yeah, and there's a shed over here. So this is really bad shape, so that's all going to get removed. And then this area here is going to be, revegetated in a more natural state.
And nothing is going to be pulled up from that section over the driveway? Just gonna leave it, the other person's problem. I know it's not your property,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about the culvert? The
That's on the
existing
other-
one is kind of an amateur,
I mean, the one going under through the yard?
yeah.
Is that gonna get crushed with equipment? I guess that was.
You know what, if, that's a good question. I probably should put down some sort of access to the back, and then we can just call for a little geotextile fabric and a little gravel on top, and then that'll just, the geotextile fabric will dissipate the load, so you don't get point loading on anything below it. So that's probably, and then that way, because you know what, you don't want to crush the culvert.
Right, because then you have to replace it.
Yeah, and it's a big job, so probably just as, because there will be sand trucks coming in here. The excavators are not a problem with the culvert because, they have big tracks and they spread the load and you can go over things, yeah, but the big, heavy dump trucks to bring the sand in up here, they have the possibility. I think it's probably deep enough, but we don't know whether it's, 3 feet here or 8 feet deep. So So I could just modify that just to show a designated access over here and just put a little filter fabric down, some geotextile grid, and then put a gravel road over the culvert area to protect it.
What size is the culvert, does it say?
I think it's 24 inches.
So do you want to continue it to June 3rd?
June 3rd.
Now, shoot, I didn't put this down, but let me just check. We have already some new filings for, that I have legal notices for June 3rd already. Same one?
What?
Yes, the red one. It's Teresa.
It keeps going off. It was going off when I came in.
Yeah, same here.
Must not like the breeze.
It's not that way.
You are a horticulturist?
No, I just.
You checking?
So, yeah, we have a hearing, we have new filings for hearings at 7, 7:15, and 7:30, so 7:45 would be the earliest.
All right. So move to continue the public hearing for the notice of intent for Rankin 1141 Main Street to June 3rd at
7:45?
7:45.
Second?
Does that work for you?
Oh, yeah.
Do I need to come? If I can make these revisions and then I'll...
You should just touch base and see if any other questions have come up.
Sure.
At least while I was drafting the order, or if I've heard anything from anybody else.
Sure.
So before the meeting, we're gonna do that.
Yeah,
See if I have a continuation.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll
Yeah.
make these revisions quickly, I'll get them over to Carol, and then, you know, if she's got other, I know she didn't look at the plan
Yeah.
thoroughly, but if she had any other questions, I could address them. If I have to come back in, we'll come back in, but otherwise,
Trying to get through that.
So I'll just have you sign the form though. So, it's fine.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of times when you dig in the septic, you find rocks or whatever that are appropriate to
right.
relocate. Yeah, mostly it's, we try to find things that people aren't gonna be able to move unless they actually have to hire somebody, and then they're less apt to move them.
Sure.
Do you have a second set of the plan?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And 2 sets for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Usually do.
It's not raining or snowing. We'll take it. Next up is Bundy at 100 Anymore Road, continuation of the public hearing for the notice of intent.
My name's John. You were at the last hearing.
Brian, nice to meet you.
Dave.
Dave.
Jan, hi, Jan.
Hi, how are
We
you?
were at our first
No,
hearing.
I was in.
New thing. Everybody's new except for me. So I won't say what the opposite of new is.
Sherry, do you spell it S-H-E-R-Y?
Oh, yeah. This is David Bundy and Sherry Sherman. They're our honorable owners. You can see is how we're gonna cut deals for their place. I thought it was good to have them at the table tonight. So, we had a site visit a week ago for anyone who wasn't there. And we went over our proposal as presented a month ago. And then we got a bunch of new ideas on the table, and it was started some horse trading back and forth. So we said, well, let's come in again and see if we can meet in the middle. So I spent some time with the owners out there. And one thing I'd like to see if we can move away from, there was a suggestion to perhaps move the small parking garage that we're talking about putting in. It's kind of an outbuilding shed slash parking garage.
What are the dimensions?
Slash barn.
Dimensions?
12 by 24.
12 by 24.
Yeah. And there's an area about 150 feet down the driveway that had been used as a staging area during construction. It's in the 100-foot buffer zone, but it's seen some hard use, so that wouldn't have required removal of any existing vegetation. There's gravel in place there, I think. And it's used as a turnout now, and there's some firewood stored there. And it makes a certain amount of sense, but Dave and Sherry really aren't prepared. It doesn't really fit kind of in their master living plan there to have that outbuilding that far from the house. So we'd like to come back and saw through a few of the ideas we had, maybe about some mitigating measures. So I have drawn a little bit more information on here. Colored it in. This is fun to color. If you haven't been out there, there's a home with a mounted septic system in front, and we don't have a whole lot of room to play with. We own plenty of land, but we have wetlands to our right and to our left, and so with the 100-foot offsets, we really have a workable area that's long and narrow like that. And way back when, 10 or 15 years ago, they put the house in, they designed everything right in there. Then, subsequent to that, they've come back with a pool proposal that was approved, I don't know, probably
2002.
Okay, there you go.
Yes.
12 years ago, after the building of the home. And so that also is in the buffer zone. So it was a feeling of the commission at the time, said, look, we're already kind of pushing hard on this resource, so let's see what we can do to push less. That area that's far away from the house was down here, and it was actually right in here off the driveway, but it was still in the 100-foot offset. So going back to our proposed area, this barn sits nicely for their uses tucked up against a turnout. There's a natural back out here, then you proceed out the driveway. We can move the building a little bit, 2, 3, 4 feet, X amount of feet onto the pavement, and then that would reduce the new impermeable area that we're proposing to occupy. So, but if we left it there, crept it forward a little bit, we can't keep moving it forward forever, or else you just can't turn the car around in there anymore. And those of you who are out there can kind of visualize that. But we do have some areas that the Bundys would be happy to not take care of anymore. They're continuous to the resource, and we could just help those areas return to a continuation of the natural wooded area. It's pretty much undisturbed wooded area, roughly along the border of this driveway. There's a mowed area right now. It's where the bird feeder was, where I almost called it a bluebird, and Lori said, look at the indigo bunting. I'm like,
Did you see, have you seen it there?
yeah, the felt just got me really embarrassed. I said,
You should
look at that
have
bluebird.
that.
Now I know.
So that's where the bear feeders are?
Yeah, the bear, well, yeah, the bear feeders, well, the turkey feeder. but-
Yeah, turkey
turkey
now.
feeder.
Yeah, the turkey comes up very faithfully, he loves that bird. So we have an area along, between where we're proposing to work and around the rim of the pool fence that would be really easily returned to a resource area. It takes some maintenance out of them. There's no visual effect to let it go back to natural. Trust me, we didn't plan it this way, but we paced off what makes sense right there, what's still being mowed and what we could just hand right back. And it's almost to the foot, the remaining impervious area that we would add. I know it sounds a little too cozy, but that's how it worked out. We also have, if the commission feels it's absolutely necessary, there is verge along this driveway that also could very easily be reduced from 10 or 15 feet wide up to just a landscape, because there's hostas and stuff along there. But that also is contiguous to the existing pretty much untouched woods. So that's what we would like to put in before the commission, in the interest really of keeping this parking area, this barn, in a place that makes sense. And we realize we're adding impervious area, but we do have the ability and the room to trade some of that space off.
Can I add a couple of comments? Too? Oh, Jimmy.
So go
I
ahead.
was going to say, so in addition, for those who weren't there, it's white pine saplings that have come up. So they're, I forget what age they might have been, but they were significant in number and in size. So the whole area where the proposed barn is wooded, essentially, even though it's young. And then along the verge, headed back out towards Annie Moore Road, I don't have a north or south for me, but just kind of beyond the proposed barn area, along that edge, there is some garlic mustard kind of coming in. So I do think that there's potential for invasives to come in. If you were going to do, mitigation in lieu of, the new proposed alteration, I'm not sure whether it might be better to try to get something else planted in there.
Oh, I think,
Rather
as
than just
opposed to
say
letting it
we'll mow
go.
it or,
No,
you know,
absolutely.
whatever.
I mean, we could move some of the wild blueberries in, or, we could, pretty good at transplanting white pines. Those move.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty
you
easily.
probably have
And
some
there's-
smaller
there's
white pines
maple-
in that
Oh,
section,
you could take
too.
a shovel and
Yeah.
you could get innumerable. Because, with the edge of the light right here, it gets really dense in all the regeneration stuff. So there's little stuff really thick right along the edge.
Did you show them with that garlic mustard? Did you get to see that?
No.
Right now, it was like just flowering with little white flowers.
That's
Oh,
garlic
that's
mustard,
garlic,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
All-
house
all
too.
on the edge, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be something that you should
wanna
try to
work
get
out.
rid of because it will,
Okay.
it gets
That's a good
invasive. Yeah.
Pesto.
It makes good pesto?
It does, we just had that for dinner.
Really?
Janet's got a website for her, we'll broadcast it, the 1 Acre Farm, is that what it's called?
Right.
And it has a lot of recipes of
Yeah,
native
it
natural.
does. It's really good.
Especially using invasives is
It's
good.
good for people to eat, yeah, because a lot of them are edible.
That sounds great. So that's kind of my presentation.
Well, I have a question about the
Sure.
area down here that is used as a turn alley. It's at least 3.
That should be removed.
And that should be removed, the garlic mustard.
Is,
Especially now that you can see it, like what that white flower is, and then learn that petal, just pull it and dry it out on the driveway.
Do we have a generic planting plan that we like from another proposal that we could possibly send along as an example to give an idea of?
Well, the other thing is the sun
I
shading
know,
and all
no,
of that stuff.
it's gotta be, but just to see some of the
Well, what
elements that
Lori
are
was saying is
included.
just, looking at what's naturally growing around there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you've got red maple growing around there, or if you have, oaks, or if you have pines, usually you just use what's kind of natural to the area. That's the best way to do it.
Right.
So if you have on the edges of the woods there, low bush blueberry, or you see some high bush blueberry, those would be the things that that would tend to survive there, do well. But it is more light than it is in the woods, so.
yeah, so I would tend not to try and suggest something that was 60, 70 feet in the woods. I'd suggest something that is happening.
Yeah, that's sort of on that
happening in
edge,
the verge.
yeah.
And something that you may be going to remove anyway.
Yeah, so if you look and see if there's some little white pines that are in that area, that could be
There are,
transplanted as a
there's
bunch.
every possible age of white pine right there. That's great.
And I don't remember the ground cover, if there was enough up at that time, like if you have Canada Mayflower, or some of the, natural ferns. I just don't remember, I don't remember much growing underneath the pines, to be honest, but, if there was, then you could use that kind of stuff too.
Right now, I have just enough square footage highlighted in red here to match the amount that we're gonna change with the footprint of the building. Is that sufficient, or is the commission going to request that we do some work along this side as well?
Well, I think we'd like to see, I can't speak for everybody, along where the parking area was, not the parking area.
Okay, up here.
I'd be more concerned in removing the invasive along that edge. The area where the bird feeder was really wasn't that substantial to me.
No.
It's just, it's an area to put the snow in the
Right,
wintertime.
exactly.
You got hostas there that are just
Yep.
gonna flatten it. It's where I'm sure you put your snow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd be more concerned in removing your invasives in that area, because that's what it was, right along
Yeah.
that.
Right along the edge, yeah.
The mustard is right
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
edge. So remove the invasive that, go out and rip that out. But I was gonna ask the same question Jonathan was asking me. Do you want us to give away both sections when we're only taking a portion? You
Well, I know when we do wetland replication projects, we usually get 1.5 the area, because it's not necessarily all gonna take the same way. But I think what the commission sounded like you were saying is that parking area, where the
Yeah,
fire
well,
stuff was.
we can put that right in writing, that we'll reduce this
Yeah, and
to
if,
just
and
a
I think
sensible
if you're doing
turnout.
the triangle and you do
Block
some
this
of
out.
that area, then that sounds like sufficient
Square
mitigation.
footage, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then garlic mustard.
And the garlic.
So how do they get rid of the garlic mustard?
Yeah, how do we?
Well, you'd want to research
Roundup.
it, but I think probably you need to pull it and get the root system out and then dry it on your driveway. So
What kind of
in-
root system does it have?
I don't remember. I have to look it
I
up
don't think
myself.
it's rhizome.
But
It's just
there is a
like
good
seeding.
website, well, there's lots of good websites, but there's one called SISMA, which is in our area, CISMA, and they have a lot of links if they don't have the information themselves, but that's a local group, so it's local plants that they typically are trying to help people out with. Garlic mustard, yeah. And I do know I have something that
Would pulling
somebody
it
gave me on
in
that.
the heavy bark mulch for, over that area, because that will just dissipate into the soil after a while anyway.
I'm not positive. I'd have to look at this website again. I know, a lot of people, a lot of people have it on the roadsides and they just pull it. I don't think they're mulching after they pull it. But anytime you have disturbed soil, then you have the likelihood of more
Right.
stuff coming in.
Right.
Carol,
So-
when you pull it, if you leave a piece of root, is it one of the ones that grows from the root? Do you know?
I don't know. I would have to look it up again. I haven't read it in a while.
Probably. I think I've pulled a lot of it and it just keeps coming and coming.
I can give you a pesto recipe.
Well, we'll
But
do our best to get rid of it.
before we issue the order, we should probably tell them if they can research it and find, I think there's probably a time before it goes to seed, that it's better to remove it, so I'd almost say it's part of your landscape yard area, you probably should try to do that before it
Oh,
goes to
certainly
seed.
what you could do is just cut the seed, it's starting to bloom now,
right.
just cut those off right now, so
Right.
you don't produce
No
more of
seed.
it. this
Yeah,
season anyway.
yeah, that might be easy, and then research it, we can put it in the order, and then it'll be a little clearer.
Okay. So do you know what you need
Okay,
to do?
so if I get homework done with Carol, then it's conceivable that the commission would vote at the next hearing? And
Hopefully I can get a draft order ready.
If
for
those
that
things-
next
If
meeting.
those things happen.
And if for some reason we can't, then we'll talk, hopefully to have some time. I know we have a lot of new public hearings even at the next meeting, but maybe we'd have time to go through the conditions and vote it.
Okay.
But the
Again, I'm
cost
just
estimate and the
trying
planting
to-
is
to
probably
get a
the
feel
last
for the-
bit on your,
for Audible.
that's the last bit on your end. The cost estimate and the planting plan.
Beautiful.
And really what you want is, so that if you were to turn it over to someone, you could say, look, this is what I want you to do. And it's clear, so that then we would be able to go out and say, oh, look, they did what they said they were gonna do.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we need to have you continue it. agree
Yeah,
to
so we'll
continue
move to continue it to our next meeting, June 3rd at, do you have a time, Karen?
it. Well, we did the last one, 7:45, so it should be
8
8.
o'clock.
Second.
And again, probably we wouldn't need them to come, right? You're welcome to. But if we have all the information in and, things are moving along, we'll probably all be here anyway. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nice to meet
Thank you.
you. Thank you. Nice
Sure,
to
how do
meet
you
you.
say the SH?
Yeah, eventually.
Very rarely.
No, it's for.
Oh, wait, so Jonathan, you gonna sign this?
It does, yeah.
Oh, you weren't sure if they were.
Century Mills not gonna be here. Arsenal's not gonna be here.
Oh, Citrus is not going to be here?
Oh, so discuss it.
We're going to discuss it.
Yeah.
But these two, the 7:30 and 8 o'clock, we're supposed to
I
be.
thought so, I think Carol wasn't sure about Knox Trail. It was
No,
sounds like-
I don't think it has to be. It's all it's-
I think
it's
you're right.
consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the other guy thought.
No, I thought he did too, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Every
you.
time we have
Yeah.
stuff that sends out runners.
Rhizomes underneath that, yeah.
Cut it down and then come up with.
Like crabgrass.
Oh,
It sounds like they were fine.
I think it's crab cherry.
Maybe they're thinking.
It's almost like that.
So, what time is it? So,
So 7:50 we had Condon.
and I did get an email from their engineer, Mark Dibbs, that he wasn't gonna be able to come. He thought possibly Jeff O'Neill, who is the CEO, was gonna come. But really, the business tonight was to go over the quotes that we got, to have the peer review, so we can still take that up.
Sure,
if you
yeah.
want to.
I looked at them briefly, they're very similar dollar amounts.
3,200 and 3,000.
Yeah, so both of the firms were ones that our town planner was aware of the companies, and knew that they both do stormwater reviews and peer reviews, and they both came across that way, that they both do a lot of peer reviews. The big difference I saw was that Beals and Thomas proposed to do a site visit. And Horsley and Witten said that they could do a site visit, but when I had spoken to them, I said, you might want to think of that as an add-on. I didn't know whether, as the peer review, whether that was going to be something we required. Where the second person, when I talked to him, he's like, well, I usually do a site visit and it's not that far off my commute, that I couldn't kind of make it an easy site visit. So I thought that was one difference between the two of them.
One would come to a meeting to explain their review.
Yeah, and I had actually said to both of them, I didn't think we needed them to come to the meeting, but that we might want them to come to the meeting. I said, I think normally what I had expected and what I thought I said to them is that, you do the peer review of the plans and all the information that's been submitted. We present that by letter to the applicant, and then they respond to it. And then, if we need a second, opinion, then that's what we would have, the second one. So, but not, some commissions like to have people come and do the report and talk about it. So certainly that's an option, and I would say that's really probably an option for either one of them if that's what we wanted. But you're right.
One of them actually was an extra. I forget which one it was. It was the first one that you sent was an extra, I believe. The oops one was part of it.
Yeah, they had figured that fee in already.
That was already figured into it.
Does the owner have any input on the repair?
Not really. It's up to the commission. You're asking for the
Has
peer
the
review.
town
We don't
used
have a
either
town
one before?
engineer, so what's that?
Has the town used either one?
I know that I don't know if the towns use them for other projects or not. Beals and Thomas, I think we may have contacted them for the Five Shire Dam to see if they were interested in putting together a proposal. I can't tell you if they did or not. Both of the firms are very well known. I mean, I know both of them, I've heard of them for a long time. They both do peer reviews in other communities.
We suspected that the passage of the new overlay might affect their plans.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything from them that way, one way or another, yet. But, I think the only thing I had heard was that they were close to filing with the planning board, or really with the selectmen for site plan review, in which case, then we might have some further conversation about whether any other departments had concerns with what was being proposed, whether it was for access for fire, or whether it was for sight lines, or, but it is all going to be private, so, other than public safety, I'm not sure. And then the drainage and the stormwater stuff would be also looked at. I'm sure selectmen will be looking at signage and lighting and noise and all kinds of other, site requirements that they have. So we have to decide on one.
We have to select one as a
Yes.
program.
The recorder shut off. Oh, no, I started it up again, okay?
Anybody have a preference? I think for those both proposals seem fine to me.
I guess the site visit seems like that might be an advantage.
It does. I think it really does.
Are they the ones that are
That's probably, there's
$200
some
more?
value in that.
Actually, seeing the piece of property.
Yeah, so I guess I'd go with that one.
Are they the ones that are $200 more?
I think
Yeah.
so, it is personally.
So the other one would do a site visit if we wanted, but then they would
Yes.
charge $200.
Well, I don't know what they charge, but they would have to charge more probably. Although, again, the question was about the hearing attendance. I don't think that they had, the $3,200 one had to attend the hearing. And they called out $500 to attend the hearing, so if they didn't attend the hearing but they did a site inspection, it
That
might
is
be,
the same, yeah.
they're coming out, they're not maybe spending as much time, but
We just sent out letters to a couple companies, so they're bidding on peer review.
I think the idea that they would actually come out and look is going to be something. They wanted to take a look first.
yeah, I asked Erica, our town planner, and she said normally when she did peer reviews, she didn't go out. But normally as a design consultant, you would expect them, obviously, to go out. But she said there are some towns that request, to have people at their meetings, there's some towns that request, because some towns have this kind of project before them a lot than we do, and so they have certain standards, I don't disagree. I think, having somebody look at the site is helpful. I guess the other difference that I kind of, and it's not really a difference that I meant to sort of make, but I did talk to Horsley and Witten first, and because I hadn't done the process in a while, she kind of explained to me what they do for peer reviews, and so I don't recall whether I asked her what I needed to send her for her to provide the quote, but I ended up sending her sort of all the material that they'd given us. So she had a little bit more of a comprehensive package. When I talked to the guy from Beals and Thomas, I said, what would you want to have to be able to provide the quote? And he said, oh, all I need is the revised stormwater report, the notice of intent. And he may have said something else. I know he referred to 3 things. But I did kind of feel like, well, wouldn't you want it all? But maybe just to give the quote, he didn't feel like he needed it. So anyway, just throw that out that I'm not sure whether they'd be more condensed in the material that they might look at one way or another. Or whether just because I gave it to Beals, to Horsley and Witten, whether they'd use it or not,
Right. We have strong feelings?
I don't have a strong feeling, I don't either way. I could produce a feeling if I had to. It's not
Carol,
strong.
do you have
Well,
a preference, or do you
No,
have a
I
stronger
don't have a
feeling?
preference, and I guess I
would.
would just say, and not really speaking for the client, but, that if we can save them some money,
$2,
and
yeah.
at this stage, maybe it's worth saving them some money, and then saying, well, if we need additional services, then we're gonna have to ask for more, and therefore we make that argument to them that, we didn't take the more expensive bidder, but we may need to, if we need to have them go out, or if we need to have them attend the meeting. I think we can revise, we don't have to take this exact contract, so if you don't want them to come to the hearing necessarily, we could save them even more with the first applicant. But if you wanted to say, well, we think you ought to come and do a site visit, again, it might come up to be about the same. So, we hadn't gotten into some of those details when I talked to them, so I just didn't, have a specific thing to give them.
Actually,
Other than-
kind of lean towards that second one myself, the $3,000.
Okay.
Anyone else feel?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Like you said, it seemed comprehensive. It saves them a couple bucks.
So what about the site visit, though? Do you want to see if they would do the site visit in lieu of the hearing at this point?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that
There's
we,
value in the
yeah.
site visit.
It's not like it's that far off the highway.
Well, Horsley and Witten is coming out of Boston.
Yeah.
I don't know where their staff would be coming from, one way or another, but you're right, it's not.
But if they were coming to a hearing, what's the difference?
Right.
Whether they're coming to the hearing or
Right.
to a site visit?
Right. Okay, so someone should probably make a motion to accept the proposal from Horsley and Witten with the modifications of them doing a site inspection instead of attending the hearing at this point in time. And that might be an add-on or something to that effect, right?
So I make a motion to accept the proposal of Horsley and Witten with the provision that we ask them to perform a site visit in lieu of a meeting with the Conservation Commission for the Condyne project at 580 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I guess the only other thing I would say is in her proposal, she did ask that we not continue, that we give them 2 weeks. So realistically, I'm just trying to think if I was able to get back to her tomorrow, which I'm not 100% sure. If I was, what did she say exactly? Let me just see. So we have to get the contract signed back and forth. So that's, it may not happen tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow. But I think, I'm just wondering whether we want it, say, June 3rd, or whether we want to continue to June 17th. Which,
We could say June 3rd unless, you know, we could shoot for the 3rd. If it doesn't happen, then,
mhm. Okay.
I mean, it seemed like they wanted to move it along.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of her proposal. Her proposal
Right.
specifically said, we request that all materials required for the review be made available to us at least 14 days prior to a scheduled public hearing. Did hers also ask for hard copies? One of them asked for a hard copy. Oh, so the other thing is that they need to have the funds, so the applicant needs to provide the funds. So I just don't think that's gonna work out with the holiday Monday, that it's all gonna happen in time to give them 2 weeks, which is what they're asking for to do the peer review.
I'm sure the other's probably the same. It's gonna take us long anyway, so.
Yeah, well, I know, I'm just saying, I don't think we should
Yeah,
continue it to June 3rd,
Yep.
because I don't think it's gonna happen that quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
So, since they're not here,
So, yeah, we
can
can
just
continue
continue.
them on June 18th,
17th.
17th
Mhm.
at 7. Do we have a?
I don't have
Okay,
anything
okay.
new.
Hmm?
I do have another hearing coming in, but I
Is that
haven't
Bunker
given it
Hill
the
then?
legal notice, so I can,
Ah,
So you want to put
But
that
that may
first?
only be in
Charged.
charge.
At 7
yeah, I
o'clock?
think it is. What did they do? Okay, everyone shuts down?
Parade. We got a guy who lived in Boston, he could never get up to Andover on days when there's a holiday in Boston, because the streets are all blocked.
So Knox Trail, do we have discussion on that?
well, we had a site visit, so we
Yeah.
did tell them they didn't need to come. So
Okay.
we should have some discussion to wrap up on that.
I thought we had determined that at least a large part of it was outside of our jurisdiction anyway.
I think all of it was. So that's the recap for the rest of the commission who wasn't at the site visit, so you should, that's all.
Or took a walk.
Yeah.
And those others that were-
That's right.
Well, you were
Maria
outside.
took a walk on a different trail, on a different path.
Report on that one.
So what, so that, we're talking about Knox Trail, and that's one that was not, the work is not within our jurisdiction? Is that what-
Right, I think when, we had 2 last time that were for the scouts, and when the, I think it's a volunteer, but he was doing work for them, putting together this proposal, and I don't think at the time, it was winter at the time, he wasn't really sure where the wetland was.
Oh, okay.
I thought he had told me that he thought, oh, I could have come up, kind of close, and then when he came to the meeting, he said, no, I don't think we're within your jurisdiction. But we already had it kind of scheduled to go out to do other site visits, so we said, well, let's take a look, make sure that we're all.
So then this one's a negative determination.
Right, so in this case, my recommendation is that you could vote that this is a negative determination. Number 1, the area described in the request is not an area subject to protection under the Act or the buffer zone.
So.
Do you want to look at it, Brian? Since you're making revisions, but-
That makes the best sense to me, especially hearing from people that were out there.
Yep.
So I would need to make a motion, or I would need to move that we make a determination for Knox Trail Council of Boy Scouts of America, their property at 75 Hudson Road, that we find have a -1 determination. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So do you need to sign this?
Yes.
That's-
Yep, so.
I'm trying to do them who are out this
Um,
For the most part, they're
Yeah,
all-
well,
the last one, this one.
the people that were doing things that didn't.
I imagine so that they might supposed to.
Didn't have to be told.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, they were.
Oh,
They
those
were-
people?
they were prior meetings, so the schedule was like, and then that's what happened.
Next up, Century Mill Estates. Discuss possible enforcement order, discuss the enforcement order.
No, I should not sign, that's correct,
Um,
because I wasn't.
right, I think if there's a quorum without you, probably would be fine not to.
Carol, are you able to give us an update on our friends at Century Mill?
Sure. So after the last meeting, what did I report at the last meeting? I'm trying to remember actually. Had I been out there?
No.
No?
We didn't have a meeting in a long while.
Oh, yeah, we haven't had a meeting in a
Right,
while, okay. So I was out there, last Tuesday, and what I found was that, I think they had complied with the intent of the enforcement order to a large degree, but they hadn't completely complied with it. So what happened was, we had asked for bright orange snow fencing to be installed all around the 100-foot aura and buffer zone areas to make sure there wasn't any unintended traffic and equipment going into the resource area without, our further review and approval. So if you remember going up Road B towards the existing wells, and they were taking their equipment in and they were going over mats that were with the section of ground that had not had an existing cart path. When you went to the bottom of the hill, they kind of did a sharp left and then a sharp right to start going back up the hill. And it was really right at that corner that I couldn't tell from the plans, where the 100-foot buffer zone line was. And it was fairly close, as it turned out. So they got that orange snow fence up, and that was fine. And then the other part of the enforcement order had to do with the crossing area, the wetland crossing area. So we had asked them to remove the erosion controls, the hay bales, and the silt fence that was perpendicular to the stream, because that work wasn't going to happen until July. And so rather than having a barrier for any migratory wildlife or critters going up and down the stream channel or that wetland channel, we wouldn't need the barrier. So Andy wasn't clear on what the idea was behind that. He just thought we wanted a breach, essentially. He thought that we didn't want the water to get ponded up.
So we moved one of the bales.
So we moved a bale. Yeah. Oh, Jim was on the sections, and I forgot. So anyway, so I informed him that that wasn't what the intent was, and he agreed that he would take care of that. And then also they had put silt fence in running parallel to the wetlands, which we had asked for them to do, so that if there was any erosion off of the slopes going down towards the wetland from the equipment that had gone in there and the loss of vegetation, we wouldn't have any sediment going into the wetland. They put up the silt fence, but they hadn't tucked it into the ground. They hadn't buried it. So we have to ask them to do that. And then the last thing that wasn't complied with was that we had asked for the conservation property boundary markers of the open space to be put up in any locations where they'd be doing work within 50 feet, so that would be clearly, visible, as we've been working along the lots with them in the past. And that hadn't been completed at that point. And Andy indicated that he might need more signs, but
So all of these things you just enumerated were part of an enforcement order?
yeah, part of a cease and desist and enforcement order. Now, the cease and desist, they have stopped working in the wetland portion of the property. They continue to do work in the open space and through the next phase of the subdivision.
Okay.
Um,
And is this crossing you're talking about the same one we were talking about last winter?
Yes.
And so whatever happened with that, I think I stopped coming to meetings at the time when it was turning into muddy
Right,
you know?
so we did tell them that the window of opportunity had
Had
closed.
passed.
And
Did
so
they do it anyway?
that, and there was an email that said, there won't be any working in the wetland until, the
Dry,
time is appropriate or whatever. And so that I used as, there's no working in the wetland.
Correct.
And then in the end of March, Andy and Alan came in to talk to the commission about going through the open space. And so there was a provision that allowed him to access portions of his subdivision if he had no other route,
I see.
essentially, through the open space. So the route that he discussed with the commission that night was partly over an existing old cart road, and partly there wasn't a cart road, and so he proposed to use mats there. He took pictures. He's put up some money for restoration of that area. And but at that meeting, we really didn't talk about going beyond into the wetland area at all. We really kind of focused on access, and
kind of hope it was understood.
yeah, I think everyone thought it was understood
It was
Yeah.
understood
that they weren't going to do any work in the wetlands.
Because
Oh,
they
yeah.
couldn't get
Why
there,
would
they
we
were
be
going
They
giving
around.
just wanted to get through, to their other
Why
lots.
would we be giving them access then?
Well, we were giving them access to the open
Yeah.
space, but not to do any work in the wetland
I
area.
thought that through going through the open space, the reason they wanted to do that was to get to the wetland.
No, it was
to
to
get
do the
around
upland work.
lots.
Oh, to get to other lots.
Yeah.
Oh,
To
get
they
around
use
it.
that to go into the wetland?
Because they couldn't go over the
Well, so
culvert.
what happened is
Yeah.
Andy was away on vacation, and the person he hired to do the tree clearing
Yeah.
was fairly clear that he'd been told to cut all the trees in the road and the detention areas, and he believed he was not told not to go through the wetland or within the buffer zone. He said he wasn't, I think he felt he was told not to bring any equipment in the wetland itself, but he didn't feel like he was told to stay out of the aura or the buffer zone. And so I had done a site visit because Jim and Bob out there, because I was going on vacation at the end of March, and so I couldn't get out there to see this area through the open space that they were going to use. And Bob had said something about, I think there's some erosion control that's not installed real well, and, can I take a look at it? So when I got back and was able to get out there, I was going over to look for this, billowing silt fence or whatever, and instead I came across people with chainsaws and a big tractor with a grapple taking trees out. So when I
But
finally...
they weren't grubbing, they were just.
They weren't taking the stumps out, no, they were cutting, everything was cut, pretty much. So all the
Well,
oral area.
you stopped.
After it was over.
We're not sure what they would have continued to do.
Yeah, well, pretty much they had gotten most of the aura. The other side of the wetland was already all cut, the detention basin area was all cut. There may have been a little bit towards Road C that they hadn't finished, but anyway, and then I went back, I think the next day with Jim, because at first I wasn't 100% sure whether, maybe I crossed, I told the guy, I said, I don't think you're supposed to be working in this area, but I said, but let me check with the chairman, and let me check with the, since Andy wasn't on site, let me check with, Alan, and try to make sure that, we're not, hearing things differently, or I heard it differently, or whatever. Anyway, Alan said, no, we weren't gonna work in the wetlands at all. And Bob said, no, we weren't doing any work in the wetlands, so I called the guy and I said, no, you have to stop work. So he stopped work, but his logging truck was there the next day taking out the logs that they had cut. So I'm like, all right, well, so they stopped work, but they didn't really stop. I mean, they stopped cutting and they stopped clearing, but they were taking what they cut, so the equipment was still working. So at the next meeting, the commission decided, well, we'll issue the cease and desist and put in measures that, will help protect the resource area. So tonight they were supposed to come in and report on their steps that they had done to comply with that and what had happened, or,
Okay.
so.
They were supposed to come tonight?
Yes, the enforcement order required them to come.
Were they
here
also
tonight.
supposed to clear out the catch basins?
Yes, also there had been a lot of sediment and silt that had built up and wasn't being maintained. And so that was also in the enforcement order.
I did verify that they did the ones at the bottom too.
Yeah, I think I ended up stopping on the way out.
So they were supposed to come, and we were supposed to say what?
Well, they were supposed to report to us on their compliance. I'm reporting to
Okay.
you from last Tuesday.
Okay.
They may have done more of that work. I haven't been out again since then. I am going out Thursday.
So now what happens if they don't show? What do we do?
Did they tell you they weren't gonna make it?
Today.
They told you today they're not coming?
Yeah, Andy had a conflict, and so Alan didn't feel he was gonna come I guess,
I did take Riley up there today, and the stumps are still there.
yeah.
I can verify
But
that.
you didn't notice whether they've opened that channel or?
No, I didn't go down
Yeah.
that far.
So the other thing that happened last week was that our town planner asked for a meeting to try to get her up to speed with how the project was progressing, because
You can open that if you want to.
she hadn't been appraised of work starting, you know, and we hadn't had a pre-construction meeting on the site, and again, where they weren't supposed to be working in any wetland areas, it wasn't really my call to say, like, we need to have a pre-construction meeting, because it was all, he'd already kind of told the commission what he was gonna do, but he hadn't talked to the planning board. So, anyway, so Erica called a meeting and had a fairly succinct agenda, and some of it revolved around their stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is something that was required early on in the project, that they submit a stormwater pollution prevention plan and that they follow it. And that's what you use for your erosion control. And anytime you alter an acre of land or more, you're required to have this. And it used to be like 5 acres, but now it's down to an acre. And so they agreed that they would update that. And Andy wasn't aware that there's a log, like a weekly log you're supposed to fill out and keep that record. When the project had first started, he had a clerk of the works, and we had discussed that kind of thing, and the clerk of the works was aware of, every week.
I'm keep okay.
Check everything. But since it's progressed from so many different contractors doing the work, and now it being Andy himself and his company doing the work, it needs to be updated. We also asked for some updated plans. Erica didn't have the final subdivision plans. Let me just look at my notes.
You could watch from here and tell me about school. Tell me how things are going.
So, so we also talked about wanting to have regular site visits and regular inspections. So that's going to start this Thursday, and we'll try to keep that up on a weekly basis. Partly so that we know what's going on, partly that he knows that we've seen the site in certain conditions. He's saying, if you only come out once in a while and you happen to catch it on a bad day or whatever, then that's all you see. I'm like, well, it shouldn't be a bad day, right? But anyway, there may be a point in time in the bad day. So, and she went over a couple things that were more for the planning board about the phasing, that she wasn't familiar with it and how they were doing that. And we asked him for an updated construction schedule. So what he had given us in January really wasn't sufficient, since it's following a different pattern, really. And I think one of the other things we talked about was the staging areas. And for the most part, staging areas are what he had proposed to be staging areas in January, but there was an area off of Road C that they'd cleared a long way back, and I didn't know really where the open space began. So that was the other reason to get those open space markers put in. So I'll find out Thursday whether they've complied with the things I asked them to do last Tuesday. But as far as, just coming and finalizing their compliance tonight, I don't think you can lift the cease and desist. That would be, potentially the next step is to lift it.
They need to come here to do that.
Well, they did ask to be put on the next agenda, so
Okay, good.
I think we should just continue with that.
Someone doesn't comply with the enforcement order, what happens next?
Well, we can start to fine them. So there can be a fine on a daily basis, and I guess what I would do is, if on Thursday I go out and find that they haven't done some of the things that we had asked them to do. I mean, they had 72 hours really initially. So as I said, I think the intent was there, but I don't think they quite got what we were asking for, because, the fence was there, it just wasn't buried, and the hay bale was breached, but it wasn't like entirely removed, So I think that would be the next thing, and I would probably come back to you and send you an email and say, this is what I found, and I think we should start with the tickets, which we've never had to get to. But you know what? That's what happens sometimes.
What time on Thursday?
10 o'clock. Yeah, the town planners arranged it, it's fine. But yeah, anyone, Jim, or anyone who's free who wants to join me.
It is my daughter's nominal due date.
Oh, so you're on call.
I have to take my cell phone before.
You guys better have it tonight.
Oh, I do.
All right, discuss it, we don't really have to continue, or do we have to continue it?
What's this? This one? Century Mill?
Century Mills.
Well, they asked to continue to the next meet, or to be added onto the next agenda, so I'll just do that. You don't have to take any.
Beautiful.
I'm expecting someone for Craftsman at, at least around 8:30, so I would say we could take up something else. That's not a hearing or anything.
Burnham Road, do I remember that?
Oh, so Justin Arsenault had asked to come in, which is why I had it timed on the agenda, but then he called or emailed, he called me this morning and left a message that he couldn't come tonight, he had to work, so, and I said to Brian earlier, I said, if we have a few minutes, I could just tell you what he was gonna come in for. Originally, I don't know, Jim, if you would have been familiar with the project, but he built a new house on Burnham Road, and a lot of the area was within priority habitat, I think, of the lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was an existing lot, so we had to allow construction of a house and a driveway.
It's a tough lot.
Yeah, it was riverfront area, I think that's what it was. It was riverfront area, and under the regulations, they met the grandfathering provisions for an existing lot. We went through the lot stuff for a long time. Anyway, so the house is pretty close to Burnham Road, and then there's a septic system out in the back, and they did restoration of side slopes associated with the grading for the septic. And then we had kind of negotiated, this is the end of the landscape area. And so what he was asking me was, just beyond the limit of the landscape area, could they put a raised garden, like in a, bin of some kind? And I said, well, I think you'll have to talk to the commission, because I think they'll probably say, why can't you put it in your landscaped area, because that's supposed to be sort of a natural area and not, allow for continued encroachment. But I said, you could ask them about it. Anyway, so that was one of the things he was going to ask. And then the other thing was that as part of the mitigation, essentially, they proposed to do this conservation restriction, and I think in part with Heritage as well, that was why they proposed it. They proposed signing the restriction on posts, and some of the signs are kind of out in the swamp. And last year, he had come in and talked to me and said, I tried all summer to kind of get out through there. I couldn't get there. It was either too wet or it was too thick or whatever. I couldn't get to those locations. And I said, I think he may have come in and talked to the commission, but I know I had the conversation. I said, well, why don't you wait till the winter? And when the ground's a little more, solid, you could maybe get out there and you pound them through and whatever. So this winter, I guess he tried to get the surveyors to go out, and the surveyors said, we're not going out on the ice. It's a swamp. It's not like it's a open pond. Anyway, so he couldn't get them to go out. So his argument is sort of all been along is like, nobody's ever going to see these because nobody's getting out there to monitor them. It's probably the case, but he wants to find out whether or not, before he can get a certificate of compliance, which is how it's written into the order, he's going to have to get these in or not. And so that's what he was going to talk to you about too.
So it's required that he needs to put up signs for the conservation restriction?
Yes.
And they're out too far out.
Do we do that that's done everywhere? Everywhere there's a conservation restriction?
Well, we've negotiated different ways. Like some places we've got the re-rod with the caps. He had proposed the signs, so that was how it, we kind of went with what was proposed. I think we agreed with him that it didn't have to be as big a sign as he had originally proposed. We came down with a smaller sign.
It has to be to indicate, he has to put something out there.
Well, that was what we were looking for. It is a surveyed line. We do know where it would be, but there's nothing there for someone to go and monitor. I haven't been way out in the back to try to see where it is with him, so I don't really know the condition. It's really up to him to come and talk to you about it, or to try to bring you out there to show you why he can't or something. Yeah. So I just told him I'd mention it, that's what he was originally.
The whole
planning
site's
to do.
kind of on a peninsula. It just kind of goes out and then kind of swerves around. It's like this mall that kind of happens. The whole swamp system is kind of taken over around it.
So I think his restoration will be 2 years, maybe come fall, and so he's really just trying to see what he's gonna have to do to close this out. So we'll have to probably schedule another time with him.
Did he make a comment when you said, why can't the garden be on the landscape area?
I'm sure, I think it was more like to do with the sun.
I said,
you know.
better you do shade.
Shade.
Okay.
Ah,
Pretty precise.
Do you want, are you waiting for Mark? Is Mark coming? Okay, do you want to do Nichols real quick then?
All right.
You scared me. I thought Mark wasn't going to show up.
Oh, no, well, if he doesn't, you'll have to do all the talking.
You're ready, yeah. Nichols 601, 603 Main Street, the request for a certificate of compliance. Carol, you have recommendations?
Yes, so this was a septic system. I commented on it earlier in the fall, earlier in the spring. We had sent out a letter because we were looking to close out some outstanding orders. And they had responded with, yes, everything's been completed. When I did the site inspection the first time, I found that the erosion control was still in, and then there was a bunch of dumping sort of on the slopes. Does that ring a bell? Anyway, it's all cleaned up now. Everything looked fine and very good, so I would recommend issue the certificate of compliance. It's just under the State Wetlands Act because it was a septic system, and there was one continuing condition that the prohibition of use of coal tar sealant within the wetlands or buffer zone.
So make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for Nichols 601, 603 Main Street. All those in favor? Aye. So it
Because
goes.
that was actually part of the minutes that you had.
Yeah, okay, that's good, so it all comes around.
There it is.
Who seconded, sorry?
I did.
Now, I think this was before my times.
It was probably before everyone's
It's
time.
part of the-
Oh, but we can all sign it anyway.
Well, if you're gonna go with my recommendation. Okay. You need a quorum. People wait, that's the hard thing.
Do you want to take up Weaver,
Sure.
23 Deer Path? Gonna discuss Weaver, 23 Deer Path, request for a certificate of compliance. Carol, do you have a recommendation for Weaver?
Yes, I recommend that you issue a certificate of compliance for Weaver. This was a pool that was proposed within the riverfront area, and there was a substantial mitigation planting plan agreed to by the owners, and it was very terraced, very steep slope. Do you guys remember any of it? Yeah. And so everything's been planted, and the site looks stabilized. It's gone through, the winters where the seeding was completed and there's been no erosion. Our order did not say anything about a 2-year period on the plantings. So it's only been 1 year on the plantings, but they did look fine. It was not,
What plant, were they trees or just?
it was a mix. There were a couple of big red maples that were really nicely leafed out. There were a bunch of sweet pepper bush and blueberry bush.
Wasn't there also a piece of their yard that they didn't know was conservation?
Under a conservation
land?
restriction, yeah, and so the iron pins have been put in and caps that say conservation restriction, and it's all very naturalized in that area. The only thing that was a little confusing for me is that on the as-built plan, they seem to show, there was also a proposal for a shed, if you remember. There's no shed there. But they show the box where the shed would be on the as-built, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't remember the shed.
They may have even said maybe that they weren't gonna put it
They said they
in,
weren't gonna do that.
but it was shown on the plan, so, and then they had it highlighted dark, so I didn't know why they
So
showed it and didn't note it as a deviation if it wasn't.
Oh, right over here.
And they also did record a deed restriction for the pool maintenance, you know, for the, that we required.
Yeah. Not that I don't remember the shed, I think that they said they weren't gonna do that.
Let me look in the order and see if we said anything about it.
And did we put something in the deed, did we put something about pool drainage?
Yes.
in the deed?
So the deed restriction is all about the maintenance, really, of the, it's the standard language that we came up
Okay,
with.
and that has nothing to do with the certificate of compliance.
Well, they had to do that, but they
Oh,
did. They
okay.
reported it at the registry. It had to do with not draining pool or hot tub into any body of water or wetland. Has to be more than 50 feet of away from any wetland for discharge. Shutting off the chlorine system, making sure the pH levels are a certain level. Not disposing of algae, storing chemicals safely, so that was stuff that we have standardized.
Yep.
So, what they didn't request was the release of the escrow money, but if you're gonna vote the certificate of compliance, I can let them know that they could make that request.
So I make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for Weaver at 23 Deer Path.
Okay, and so, I'm sorry, there were 3 continuing conditions. And one was that best practices for pool maintenance shall be followed in accordance with the operation and maintenance plan. The impervious area of 4,642 square feet should be considered permanent alteration of the riverfront area, and also no herbicide, pesticide, hazardous materials, and so forth stored within the wetland, including riverfront. And then it was also issued under both the bylaw and the Wetlands Act. So did you second that, Jan?
Yeah, well, I think all of us did. You put it in our names.
I do.
All right, well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries.
Oh, under the bylaw order, there was also an additional square footage called out for adjacent upland resource area, as considered permanent alteration.
As that goes through, I guess we should circle back to Craftsman and Sugar Road. Their request to amend their current order of conditions.
Nice to see everybody again. I mentioned to Sotir, I only noticed a couple of poison ivy spots on my hand, otherwise I'm
Not
okay. So, I guess, continuing on our conversations, this is a plan that I believe Carol asked for today. So the lots and the pavement.
Well, I said I did the other part, the section C of the wetland delineation today with Bill Murray, and
Yeah.
we were looking at the plan and I said, you know, I couldn't figure out where some of the road was going on this side because it was just hard to pick it up, and I also wasn't sure about all the dark lines, and anyway, he said, oh, well, I just, you know, did a plan that shows where the pavement is. Because so, anyway, yes, I didn't know that you were gonna bring it, but that's fine, that's great.
A couple of things from, I guess, the last meeting with the board back in January or February. There's a couple of minor changes we made to the site. One of them was, you know, general as a result of some requests from the board. You may remember down here, we actually had this driveway coming down and almost wrapping around this building. So we cut that back and shifted some of the driveways over here, and so this pavement is actually ending right at this building instead of coming all the way around it. And that was, I think, probably one of the closest spots where we had some pavement. So we pulled that out, we shifted this road a little bit too. I think we talked about it briefly at the site walk. Preliminary conversations with Tennessee Gas had requested that if we're gonna cross, if we can try to do it perpendicular, where we were kind of, you know, going right over the easement. So we shifted that roadway out a little bit. Not, I think, too much of an impact overall. And then down in the front here, we actually cleaned some things up. We had some detached structures. You know, so when we look at the overall impervious, we ended up taking out a couple of garages and incorporating them as garages under with the grading allowed. Kind of cleaned up the site. This one we were doing the same thing, but it's not reflected. So just trying in general to cut down the pavement, cut down the amount of impervious on the site in general. Otherwise, the site's pretty consistent with what we had, subject to some, you know, just some minor tweaking and things, dealing with access points to get up into these different quads in different areas. So we're still at the same, you know, 30 units as compared to the 42 that were approved. We're still at the same 60 bedrooms as compared to the 168 that were proposed before. One thing that's a little bit different, the wellhead that we had before was, we had it, I think we pointed it out where there was the manhole lot where the existing well lines connected. He located that when they were on the site, so it was a little bit different. It's actually further out from the line that we had from previous plans that we took it from. This plan also shows, you know, we did some, we talked about it actually the day of the site walk, we did some additional soil evaluations just to see what we were dealing with for groundwater, so we could plan appropriately for just basements, general drainage considerations on the site. As we talked about on site, the existing line that was approved was represented by this black line. Most of the flags that were out there were gone, so our engineer went out and instead of trying to locate the old flags, he just went and, you know, laid out a new line. And when he laid out the line, there was some variation to what had been approved. You know, generally it was in, you know, 10 feet in some areas, a couple areas where it's about the same. So it's the same general location. When we did the site walk the other night, I think by and large, really I think there was only one spot where I think Carol and Bill had looked at it and thought, you know, that one of these flags pulled out a little bit. I think it was this 22. But I think for the most part,
Well,
I'll be biased in my speaking, so.
No, I didn't agree with his line. I think I found that the original line was more consistent with what we were seeing with soils. Now, just the caveat with that was that the light was getting bad already. I mean, it wasn't bad when we first started, but there was a lot of glade soil, and then there were some holes where we were just hitting, you know, water, you know, so, and Mark had said, you know, they did some soil testing, the groundwater's pretty high. So Bill was going to key out, there was a lot of dogwood, which we weren't sure which dogwood it was at the time, and he had thought it was more of an upland dogwood, which it may be, but the soils looked really like they were hydric soil. So I'm not sure if he changed his opinion one way or another based on what he was keying today, and Andy was going to look at the soils again in the better light today. But so where his new line really pulled in areas what I was told on the site was that they were gonna honor the existing line.
We had said that before.
Yeah, and I didn't see it as inconsistent with the old line.
That's what I was getting.
Okay, so,
But yeah, as, even, before the meeting and even before, Bill had gone out there, the request was always really from a planning perspective that, if we can, deal with an amendment and agree on the old line, in areas that we felt that it came in, it's just additional space, additional buffer that's available. But to be consistent with the, just the overall planning process, it is still our request to seek to do an amendment to the old order, recognize the old line that existed, and move forward from a planning perspective on that basis. What we do, expect will happen, and if we can get this line agreed upon, we're pretty much done from a planning sense. We've got to finalize the drainage, which we didn't do because, just in case there was any tweaking. But, so we need to do a new complete drainage analysis. We'll be submitting that to the ZBA. The ZBA is going to have peer review take a look at it. So, I think all of the analysis that you'd see on the site of dealing with drainage and dealing with flow, the work, it's all going to be done, and it's all going to be reviewed by a town engineer. So, there's no steps that we're going to be missing. It's just, looking to be consistent and looking to be able to keep moving forward from a planning process.
I just have a question. I haven't been here in a couple months and I didn't go to the site. This looks different to me than when, back in January. Didn't it circle all the way around your original?
It didn't circle all the way around. This circled around about to, beyond these buildings. And so there was some concern of that given the proximity to the wetlands, so we curtailed it. We pulled
So it
it back.
never circled all the way?
It didn't go all the way around,
okay.
no.
the old plan.
The old plan.
Oh, you
went- the-
wait,
yeah.
but you must have shown us both.
Yes.
We
right?
did,
Oh,
He
yeah,
did.
yeah. The
Yeah.
old plan was a looping system and, came, right back along this edge.
And the
so
houses
that-
were on the outside of the...
Correct,
right, okay.
yeah. So that was the old plan. We always have tried, we kept the,
Okay.
kept the loading with vehicles to the side to try to keep, the relationship to the wetlands a little bit more open with the buildings and, and have a broader, I guess, more interesting greenscape on the property.
Did you open the site visit?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I would just add, so today, Bill and I looked at the C line.
That's all.
I think I only brought one tick back, probably some poison ideas. Anyway, again, we did find remnants of flags. There was maybe one, I don't remember if there was really two places where it seemed a little low from the original line, but none of the, I think for the most part, none of the work that they're proposing would be affected by, too much by the shift of where we might have seen it. So Bill hung some flags as to where we both could come to an agreement today in the field. The one question was that, he and I talked about was whether or not we'd want that to be picked up as a new line and flagged, on new plans as they're submitted. Personally, I think the cleaner, the plan and the project is, the easier it will be for someone to follow in the future. So, well, it may or may not change considerably. To me, it would be easier to have something that's current, and know that we are in agreement on it. But he didn't actually number them or do anything. He was going to just wait and see what the commission wanted.
Well, it does if somebody wants to do any kind of after-the-fact building or whatever, this.
Yeah, I don't know that, so I don't know what restrictions will be on this project site, because I'm not sure, is it condominium land, right? It's
Yeah,
common
it's
owned
a
land?
condominium, and the other thing, the easement is here for the gas line. So other than doing the crossing here, we don't have anything in it, we're not going beyond it. And the area, I think, it was.
There was
more
one
like
area
on this-
down in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
down in here.
Then there was
that-
an area, it was a little bit, right at the toe of the, right where the bottom of the hill was, so a little bit
Right.
up the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, away from the road.
Yeah.
Is this where the old cellar hall used to be?
Uh,
There's a depression in there right now.
This
So
is-
that's gonna be a drainage?
That's gonna be drainage, yeah. And so there's not gonna be any building over here. If you wanted to put something on it that, that restricted it, on this side of the easement for building, to have a comfort level that, where there might
Where's
have
your
been
lot
one-
line go? Do you own?
The lot line is here. So this is the lot line.
So the flagging was actually off the line,
Technically, yeah, the flagging was off the locus, yes.
except for up further. Yeah.
Here is where it
Yeah.
crosses into
Yeah.
ours, yeah.
So there's no special treatment of that terrain either?
We're not doing anything to it. And if, this is, there's a little knoll when you come up is here, and then there's a low spot that is here that we're gonna be enlarging a little bit. Soils were good, for drainage, so this is, the main drainage point, which is where it is now for the most part. So we're not gonna be doing anything really that, in my opinion, I don't think that Carol would argue that would have any direct impact on this. And certainly, we wouldn't have a problem, if you wanted to, we wanted to put a plan of, something, a note on the plan of not to be disturbed or something along those lines. I think any work that they do in the gas line is going to be more of an impact than
Yeah, and
anything we're going to be
they don't
doing on
flag
the
it or,
opposite side.
I mean, they said we're doing it.
Yeah, and they made a bit of a mess in a couple of areas. Bill was saying today
Yeah.
that you guys had talked about when I talked to them on the phone.
The,
In terms of
I mean, the wetland system down where Mark was noting that, there are a couple, it was that part of it was quite nice, and then it narrows down into a fairly small channel, up as you get towards the culvert. And it sort of, no, the culvert on the site.
Up here, okay.
Yeah, and there's definitely more invasive honeysuckle, kind of overgrowth in that upper section than at the toe of the pine knoll slope there, which, it's probably been disturbed, I guess, maybe from the gas pipeline. I mean, it seems like,
We
that's the only
haven't,
reason I can
yeah, other
imagine.
than the
it's-
testing that we've done, we haven't
Yeah.
had any activity on the site. I know there was a question of, this culvert, based on what everybody, it appears that this was changed out
It
at
was
some point.
upgraded.
Yeah, before,
Sweeney?
By Sweeney, apparently.
I guess, one thing, I would certainly want to know what the sizing of it was, and whether or not that was sized, whatever they upgraded it to was what is adequate for the site, because I certainly want them.
But you won't propose anything on the other side of in the
No.
field anyway?
No, we're not proposing anything beyond it, and, except we didn't touch it ourselves, so. And from what, and again, this was, from this, he said, she said, that it was a modest pipe that was in there. There's a relatively modest pipe now, so Bill seemed to think, or Sue seemed to think, that it's enlarged a little bit, but not substantially. But that's just hearsay as far as anybody can tell, because it happened, whenever it happened, we're not quite sure what happened. But we did see the evidence of some of the plantings that you had thought that was done as part of some replication work, some blueberry bushes, et cetera. So we know that they've done some work within the zone that was discussed and was requested as part of some extensions that the board had granted in the past. But the bulk of it is, they stripped out everything. All along in the front, whether it came back into the buffer zone, I'm not sure, but it was in the front zone. It wasn't, they didn't go right up to where, you would feel it was the only wetlands. There was still a bit of a distance here, but whether it's within the 100 foot, I'm not 100% sure. So that is our request for the board to agree to amend the existing permit, and we would complete our planning. We would work with the ZPA to get everything designed and analyzed, and work with the board concurrently for any reviews that you want to do, and any type of mitigation we want to work out. We're certainly open to meeting the all reasonable into the board to make sure that you're satisfied. I know Bill had said you guys had talked about, again, on the site, that, some of the invasive plants that are there, that we're certainly willing to work with you to
Yeah, so I asked Bill
what you would
some,
like us to.
I told him, one of the things that we had in the old order that, we would want to consider and think about a little bit more. And he was just telling me about a little bit of his background with landscape architecture. So I said it was, that there was to be some kind of delineation between the yard area around the back of the buildings and where the, before the 25-foot and the wetland area. And so one of his suggestions, and I'll just throw it out because I thought it was a pretty good idea, is that he proposes on a lot of sites to use the split rail fence, similar to what we do, but to then beyond the split rail fence have the boulders, so that you have at least like maybe a one width of a mower can get around the fence on either side of it, but then you have your boulders beyond that, so that no one's going to keep mowing beyond that point. So you get a visual barrier and then I'm going to ruin my machine, barrier. And I thought that sounded like a good idea. Again, not having really, looked at the site with the plan for all the details that, we would do during a formal review process. There is a concern with there's autumn olive out there's a lot of multiflora rose. Poison ivy being native is fine, it's fine to have that growing in, it's not a problem for me. But
Keeps people out.
Right, it keeps people out. So, but it's just whether or not, we want to see, because I know Mark has some open spaces, so we just want to we'd have to look at those areas and how the invasives could potentially, creep in.
And again, here too, this is, I think one thing we talked about a little bit on the sidewalk, where you talk about, the creep, where this is a condominium, there are more controls in terms of where they're going to work and how they're going to work than it would be for, a single-family homeowner that's abutting the wetlands. So I think there is an extra level of protection, both to make sure that the maintenance isn't going beyond the limit that you want, and the same thing of being able to keep an eye on any invasive that it, so they don't creep good stuff in and, be closer than you want to, and, they can try to, keep a closer eye on any invasives if there's some ongoing work that needs to be done or ongoing action that the board would recommend.
So I had another question, because I didn't, when I was trying to color it up a little bit yesterday to get a bit of, again, just because we hadn't talked about it since January. I was like, I gotta start thinking about this one again. I didn't know what the dark black lines were. And so, yeah, Bill mentioned those are lot lines. So how do you envision the condominium being? Like, these lot lines are going to be all 4 separate condominium owners?
It's going to operate as, just to give the background, remind everybody, and they're not showed on here. The previous plan used a community water supply, so all the water was put together and then distributed. The previous plan also used a wastewater treatment facility. Okay, the wastewater treatment facility is necessary when you go over 10,000 gallons of effluent per day on the lot. So were they at 168 bedrooms, they're, at roughly 17,000 gallons per day, so that was necessary. Under what we're doing is that we're using 5 smaller septic systems. They're septic systems, precisely what you have in your yard. They're all gravity-based, which is nice. And they're all about 1,400 gallons, 1,500 gallons per day. You've got each lot that we've created has 6 2-bedroom homes. So we've got 12 bedrooms. At 110 gallons a day is where you get the math for the septic systems. For the water, the significant number is 25 people. You're servicing more than 25 people. You go from being a traditional well, again, like what most of us have in our yards, to what is a community water supply that requires there's a whole much more complicated administration and maintenance and infrastructure around it that's prohibitive in many ways. So that's why, when they get to a larger project, you can presumably have enough people in to afford maintaining these things. one of the flaws that we felt with the old plan, which was 42 houses, there's no way in hell they could afford to support a treatment center in the community water supply, with the treatment and some of the things that they were necessary to do. So each, in DEP, when they're evaluating the number of people, they consider to be 2 people per bedroom, so that's 24 people, so we're below the threshold. So we could use just a traditional well to service each lot. Okay? And then the size of the lots is based, the state has regulations for nitrogen loading, so you can only have 440 gallons per acre. So it becomes somewhat of just kind of a jigsaw puzzle in being able to make everything work. So that's why the lot lines look crazy. You guys have seen lots of crazy lines in Bolton with backland lots and pork chop lots and all that stuff. So it's not that much different than that. But the reality is the wells are servicing a minimum number of, or the number of people that's appropriate for the type that it is, and the septic. We're below what the overall site could load. Based on any of the regulations that are in effect. So we're not circumventing anything. We're just kind of working with the regulations as they are to come up with a plan that's viable. So these greens, and this is a septic system here, this, septic here, septic here, septic here, and then I think we've got one here. So we're using that open space as part of the design and as part of the focal point that these homes are focused on. So really, from a design sense, we look at, cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, cluster 4, cluster 5, and then this kind of finger of green space connects them all. And we'll have pathways and walkways to make it, a little more integrated community, and keeping, the parking and the loading off to the sides. So, but that's why the lot lines are crazy.
But could they all be, so with there being all these separate lots, though, that you potentially have then 5 separate trusts?
Technically, there's 5 condominiums, and then there's a master condominium that oversees everything.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to figure out.
There's one entity that controls the entire property.
One entity,
yeah.
and that...
And it administers everything.
At this point, but because you haven't gone to the ZBA, that's your intention, is how you're proposing to do it, right?
That's the intention.
Yeah, okay.
This isn't unique.
Okay.
I've done this and done this, and Bill Brookings is very familiar with it. I did it with him in Berlin. We did it in Boxborough as well.
So the open space still would be for the community at large, yes, even though the lots are going to be separate, and it would be one trust. We just, I just would say, I mean, the limited experience that I have had in Bolton anyway is with the condominium, what do we call it? A Regency.
Yeah.
And so, they've got a lot of different people, a lot of different ideas. They have a great board of trustees, but there's also people who think that certain things should be done, or certain things should, could we use this open space in this way, and the trustees have sort of the overarching ability to say yes or no. And so I just didn't know if you were going to have 5 different trustee groups in there that could be potentially having conflicts with how they manage.
Correct.
Or who they hire for landscaping, or
all of the maintenance and operations is going to be integrated within the master corporation. For all intents and purposes, the lines are just, they're on paper to ensure compliance with water and sewer regs. That's really the only intent for them. And like I said, this is a layout or a concept that I've used before. They're operating fine.
What's the average unit size?
They're they're pretty modest. They're about 1,800 to 1,900 square feet. I don't think I have the plans. I got them at the previous meetings, but kind of we designed them with a master bedroom down and a master up, so really 2 bedrooms. So whether could be suitable for empty nesters, for a broad range of people, but generally more targeted towards. It's not targeted towards families per se. It's really, if you consider what a traditional attached condominium is targeted for, single people, older couples, younger people getting started out. We think this is a better version of that, but we don't look at this as as an alternative to whatever, there's not that many subdivisions in town, but, an Oak Trail or a Fox Run or Century Mill. This is not a subdivision, and we're not going to be marketing it as a subdivision per se. It is much more of it's a detached condominium, so, but we think, it'd be a nice mix of people that, we're doing a similar property down in Hingham, that have masters on the first floor, and the bulk of it's affordable as well, but the bulk of the buyers are, more of the empty nester type that are, want to stay in town, don't want the big house, all of the things that you hear about, for people, the reason that they move to like a Regency or, even up on Wattaquatic. It's more of a lifestyle decision, than anything else. So we're looking to attract talent and hopefully keep some people in town, and some younger people that then get established in town, and then, move on to some of those other great neighborhoods, so.
So some of these units are affordable?
Yeah, there's 8 of the 30 will be affordable, and those will be sold to first-time home buyers at the 80% of the median. So the price on the affordables would be roughly, 160 to 170, pending rates by the time we get there. And the market rates, we're looking to be in the mid-4s, so we're trying to keep them as reasonably priced as we can. Our focus is to sell them. We don't want to be here for 4 years. With the market we just got out of, we like to build projects and then move on to the next one. So we'll be pricing them so that they'll, move appropriately and create a new community, not a subdivision here per se.
So, I know when we talked about it in January, I guess I still feel like it would be cleaner to do a new order of conditions. I know, Mark expressed his reasons that he'd like to just go through the amendment, and I don't have a lot of arguments not to do the amendment, other than, generally we've done the amendments just for small modifications to an existing plan and order. The only thing I can really maybe envision being a complicating thing is just as it goes on, getting certificates of compliance and things like that, whether there's any confusion with whether certain conditions were met from what were in the original condition versus what might be in an amended order of conditions. But I haven't really worked through how to write it, so I don't know whether that will be a problem or not. One advantage to doing an amended order of conditions is there's really no appeal process. The commission can kind of say what they want to say, and, he either decides to go back to the original order or, or live with what we issue. There's, that one sort of benefit. I guess I'm not sure really whether the timing-wise that it is going to go to ZBA and they're going to do all the drainage review, or whether if you were filing, or continuing with an amendment with us or doing a new filing with us, whether if the drainage stuff wasn't done, we would want to have all that before we would issue any final things.
We would expect that you would want to see that before you make a final, before you would issue a revised order. We wouldn't, we don't want it to be a redundant process, from our time and our expense, quite frankly. And, we certainly know you're going to want to see it. You're entitled to see it. So
what do you see timing wise? I guess.
Timing.
And I ask that in part because we're short a member now. We're short actually 2 members now, and we only have a quorum for 1 meeting in July and 1 meeting in August. And so, just even logistically, I'm just trying to sort of figure out how is this going to fit, whichever way we go. But
sure. I think we've probably got, in talking with the engineers, for them to complete the drainage, get it reviewed, done, and packed up, probably 3-ish weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So I would expect that we would submit to ZBA, say within a month, a comprehensive package that includes the drainage analysis. Presumably they'll use Judith Mitch, as they always have, unless there's been a change there. It's probably going to take them a month to evaluate it. So I think we're looking at probably 2 months before we would have that information. I'd say 8 to 10 weeks probably before we'd be back with, what I think would be the tangible information that you guys would be looking at. And we could certainly, based on the schedule of the board and the availability of time, we could meet and we could, talk about the permit and look at some of the administrative details in between. If it's an amended permit, I don't know how much of that work, we could do, directly with Carol, and then obviously have, the board, review it so that, we don't, everybody doesn't have to spend a whole bunch of time, on, really, just kind of finite administrative aspects. So ideally, from our end, if we could, I think that's going to be the time frame by the time we have the drainage back. So far, the discussions with the zoning board have been, very positive. They like what we're doing, and they've got to see the work, just like you have to see the work. But I think that will go in a reasonable order. So if we could, hash out some time to look at administrative stuff, and then, by the time we come back to the board, that the drainage has been, you have the benefit of an evaluation from Judith Nitch, or whoever the town uses for peer review, that hopefully we've had the benefit to spend some time to look at the permit and look at some amendments that we think are reasonable and appropriate. So when you come back to the board, you have all that, in front of you to weigh and see if, you feel that, that the interest of the act and the commission are being protected. And, by then, if there's any further modifications that are required once the final drainage, goes into effect, and there's, every time we look at it, we keep screwing around with certain houses, so things will change a little bit, but fundamentally, I don't expect to see any substantive changes from what we have on the plan, certainly in terms of, the proximity of the wetlands, the number of homes, the general size of the homes, paving. We'll be working with, with the gas line. This could be tweaked a little bit, but, we're not going to be building anything on the gas line, so we're not going any closer to it. So for the most part, I don't think that we'd see any real substantive changes. And I think that the benefit of some of the work that was done before on the permit, and we could come up with the wording for an amendment reasonably quickly. But that's how I would see it. So it's not like we're going to be ready in a month to say, let's get everything done. So why the board is regenerating some members. I'd offer to join, but that probably wouldn't be
Little conflict with this one.
It's a small one.
But get your friends. Friends and neighbors.
All right. Unless Tim Weaver. I just heard you talking about.
Who?
The Weaver's Pool.
Oh, yeah.
Tim would be very good, actually.
It would be very interesting for him to sit on the other side.
It would be, yeah.
So does anybody have an opinion as to whether you want to go through the amendment process versus a new order?
I'm not sure I understand the advantages and disadvantages of the...
Certainly one is the amount of work that it would require for you to do, and you don't know that yet.
Well, the amount of work's going to be the same regardless.
Okay.
Pretty much. If they file a new notice of intent, the one difference is that the town generates the filing fees. So you get new filing fees. It doesn't directly go to our budget, it goes to the town. So, it sort of goes there, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
You start a new clock, you start with a new, just the hearing process. You've done the site visits, you may or may not want to do another site visit, which you might, actually, when you get the final drainage stuff in, and if, just to see how the layout really looks, and looking at, where you want the, as we've talked about, the limit of activities, to sort of be, and that kind of stuff. It's still better to probably do it. And then, if everything seemed like he'd modified the plans to your satisfaction and you were ready to issue an order, you'd issue an order. And, you know, it could be appealed. I think that's one of the significant differences. You know, so any abutters could appeal it, or any 10 residents of the town that participated in the review, you know, could appeal it.
So starting over.
Mark
again.
could appeal it, you know, or the applicant could appeal it. So there's that process that is
Okay.
part of a notice of intent and issuing an order of conditions. The amendment is just a policy that the DEP has provided for. Well, and just remember, this is only right now being reviewed under the Wetlands Protection Act, because the original proposal, the zoning board waived the applicant's requirement to have to meet the standards of the bylaw. Now, that may be something the commission talks to them again about, but, you know, for them to achieve this project and stay completely outside the aura, you wouldn't be able to build the affordable component into it and the market, get all the things to work the right way. So that's why they ask for the waiver typically.
Okay, so because it's
Most
for
likely to be
affordable.
granted, yeah.
This is a 40B, yeah, so through the comprehensive permit with the
You get to
40B
that,
process,
right.
the general standard
Right.
is the Wetlands Protection Act, not the
Not
local
the
bylaw.
bylaw, okay.
And I believe in the existing permit that exists, the local
Okay.
bylaw was waived as well.
Okay.
Presumably, they would do the same. I don't
So,
know why
but
they
you'd be
wouldn't.
looking at the same things, again, just under the Wetlands Protection Act. So, where was I going on that line? Just so the amendment process is something that DEP came up with a policy as to, you know, when you might amend an order of conditions. And when you read it literally, in my opinion, it says, you know, it's expected that there may be some minor things that happen, either that there's, you know, typos on a plan, or there's
Right.
things that you couldn't have foreseen, maybe that logistically makes sense not to require a
start
whole
over,
new
right.
order of conditions, but that give you the ability to say, like, oh yeah, this really should have been pitched this way, you know, and, or the grading, you know, the grading didn't make sense, and when it, you know, we didn't ever look at it, or whatever. I mean, there could be some minor things. And so that's how the amendment policy, in my opinion, sort of reads. I know Mark and Sue presented information about superseding orders and how they've taken consideration of the broader look at that. But anyway, that's kind of where we are with that. So again, the timing is that it's up to the commission to decide whether you want to accept this as an amendment and go forward that way. And then there's really no time frame. The commission can act on it as they can, when they can. That you don't have the 21 days from when a new notice of intent is filed that you have to act on it. You know, Mark's asking you to be reasonable, and, you know, you guys are reasonable, so I'm not expecting that you wouldn't be, but I'm just saying, the advantage is if you felt like, I can't deal with this, you know, and we're not prepared, or we're not ready, or we don't have quorums, or whatever, you don't have that constraint.
Could a butters appeal an amendment?
I don't believe they can.
And
I'm not positive, I guess I'd have to
Right,
double check
right,
that.
right.
I don't think an amendment can be appealed.
in a sentence, what is the amendment here? Like in a.
In a sentence, the amendment is, you know, there's an overall reduction of impact on the site, a substantial overall reduction of impact
Okay, you
on the site.
pulled, and that was.
It's a reconfiguration
A
of
reconfiguration.
the plan.
It's not their plans from the original plan.
It's not,
Oh,
I mean, this has been
right, I
changed a little bit
gotcha,
since
I
they
gotcha.
originally.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
The original
yeah.
plan had 42 houses.
I
Yeah.
gotcha,
We have
okay, so
30.
we're still working on that. I thought this was something,
Yeah, now that.
you're
yeah.
still, it's basically the same meeting.
Yes.
This is a continuation of the meeting we had in
Oh,
January.
so you guys, there hasn't been anything happened in between?
No, well, we walked, we waited and walked the wetlands into the
I
site.
got you.
The
Okay,
winter
so
was
it
so
is-
bad,
all right,
we couldn't get out
So it is
there
a
until-
substantial difference, so
It's stretching.
it's stretching the amendment, I understand, yeah, it's.
I can't imagine the Hebrids objecting to having people who can walk into the candy store across the street.
No.
I can't.
No, but I guess my question more, and I'm in the same boat where I really like the project, I think it's a lot better. But we do have to be really careful of precedent, that if somebody has a major,
Yeah.
and this is not major, but if somebody has a major subdivision coming in and then they want to completely change the plan,
Right.
we can't really go back to see if Brandon was saying to, well, you did an amendment for these guys.
Sure, also
And we don't want you to have to go to the abutters, we don't want to have to open it up, and I would just be nervous. Like, I'd like to change if the old thing was proposed next to my house and then this came along, I'd be much happier with this proposal next to my house.
Right.
But I would be a little freaked if I could go to the public hearing for the old one, and then 10 years later, they were gonna change it, do something completely different, and it's like you're shut out of the process, like they're just gonna amend the old orders. And again, I think this project is 100 times better than the old project, but that doesn't mean that down the road, 5 years, we might have a new project that's 100 times worse than the project that we
Right.
approved.
The issue is setting the precedent.
That's my
of-
biggest fear.
Yeah, of calling something this substantial.
You do have the benefit of the 40B that kind of controls that precedent issue, which
What-
means that a 40B is very specific to a particular site and what you do with it.
And the local bylaw as
True,
well.
yeah.
So the setting of a precedent does not apply because anyone else who comes.
Well, but again, we might have another 40B site where it's a great plan that we love like this, and then 10 years later, somebody comes in and says, hey, we're changing it to the site that we absolutely
Well,
abhor,
the
we
precedent-
hate,
the
but
precedent-
we just want to amend it because you've done that before, and why aren't you doing it for us? And then we're gonna run into a lot of
Well,
trouble.
if we were going to amend it, we'd have to state the reasons why we're amending it.
It's true.
Because
Yeah.
the amount of square footage reduction.
Yeah.
You know, the field behind, I'm not sure what you were planning, what the original intent was, what the intent is now. I think the original intent was ball fields or something,
Potentially, they were blasting out the hillside.
Yeah, is there mitigation that you donate it to the town for conservation purposes?
Trail access we've talked about, that can certainly be available.
Some of these mitigations may be what would lean towards.
What precedent are we setting?
Can I just
Yeah.
go through the actual policy for a
Jim
second?
gets it, Rachel.
Okay.
Jim gets- he's been
Oh,
trying
I mean, if we're afraid that the precedent we're setting is, we'll allow an amendment if we like it, and we won't allow it if we don't,
Yeah,
yes, that is a dangerous precedent.
yeah.
If, on the other hand, the way we look at it is, all of the alterations are to cut back on the impact, to offer more mitigation, less impervious. All in that direction, then it seems like it's a positive kind of a precedent to have. To say, gee, if somebody does come up with something like this again, and it's in that, it's changed in those directions,
Yeah.
then we should consider it in the same way.
Okay, so I have some changes to make to my my earlier comments.
Like-
So, well, first of all, I mean, again, what it does say, and this is teeny writing, so even with my prescription glasses.
Want me to read it?
The department recommends that in processing an amendment to a final order conditions, the most simple changes such as correcting obvious mistakes, such as citing a wrong file number or typographical errors, be accomplished by correction of the order, or the copy sent to the department. So those were sort of what I was saying. But they also said above that, that in order to allow for smooth operation of the permitting procedure to avoid unnecessary and unproductive duplication of the regulatory effort after a final order of conditions has been issued, the department recognizes that it would not be reasonable to require a complete refiling of a notice of intent when the changes sought in the final order are relatively minor or will have unchanged or less impact on the interests protected by the act.
We're protected.
Amended orders provide assurances to applicants that modifications undertaken in the course of the project are within the scope of deviations allowed within the receipt of a certificate of compliance. That was the one question I was going to say. But the process that they outline does require that they notify the abutters, and it does give them appeal rights. So, so if after considering the information presented by the applicant and any comments received at the public hearing, within 21 days of the requested amendment and the issuing authority decides to issue an amended order conditions, a copy of such order should be forwarded to the department, as the case may be at the time of issuance, that didn't read that well. By analogy to the usual appeal procedure of the final order conditions, a person aggrieved by the amendments to the order or the other parties given appeal rights may within 10 days of issuance request the department review the changes made to the final order. The issues under appeal will be limited to those issues subject to the amendments
Again, I don't think they're going to the abutters.
or changes made in the final order conditions. until there's final resolution, no work, blah, blah, blah. And the only other difference, well, no, I should say the only, but one other thing is that the date, effective date doesn't change with an amendment. So they're still working under the existing extension of the permit, which gave them 4 years, I think, from whenever that last date was. But I think it's still, you had about 4 years or something, right?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hearing all that, I feel much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, letting this go as an amendment. Seems to fit, right? Seems to comply with their definition.
I mean, the size is the only part that's scarce, but it seems to fit that it's, like I said, it's moving in a positive direction.
Where they said less impact.
Abutters will still have a chance to, and again, I don't think the abutters are gonna say
Right.
anything, we'll be happy to have it, but at least they'll have a chance if they wanna say anything.
I'd still like some kind of mitigation as far as, like, that parcel. I don't know if you had said what you were going to do with it.
The only thing that we've contemplated is if we wanted to do some type of a community garden for the residents or something. But anything would be low intensive, and we can certainly work with the board as to where it would be and what it would consist of.
Could you put a conservation restriction on it, do you think? That would allow for agricultural use?
I don't want to do a conservation restriction through the state, because anytime I've done with them, it's been nothing but a complete pain in the butt. And that's the only reason. I have no reason not to do it. If we want to put something, over the permit or over the property that limits what can be done in the back and providing access for recreational uses and for agricultural purposes, I have no problem with it. Anytime I've dealt with a conservation restriction, it's taken 4 years and I just never get there. And I don't want to go there. But short of that.
Do you remember Teal Road?
Huh?
Didn't you and I work on that one on Teal Road?
Yeah, and then we just threw it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened the same thing at Harvard, and it happened on another property.
Yeah.
Every time you get close to the point.
We have had a lot of
good
good success with CRs in the recent years, but,
every time I get close, they change them. You get new
Yeah.
people, and you're starting over.
Yeah.
And it's just been
It's
this
just like the Conservation Commission.
ridiculous circle. So I don't have a problem building into the order, restrictions.
permanent conditions or in the master,
Of what they
can you
can
put
do.
that kind of thing in a master condominium?
Sure, we can do
I
anything
mean,
we want.
I-
We control it. Yeah.
Just not that familiar with those.
Yes. Yeah, we can, and we're open to that. This land, and just on top of it, because the way that the lots are broken up, that acreage, it's used in conjunction with these lots to comply with the Board of Health requirements.
So
So
nitrogen
it can't be
loadings
used
and-
for anything no matter what.
So,
They
so
couldn't convey it,
the
they
other
couldn't do this,
parcel,
they couldn't
Freddie's
do that.
parcel, or the bank and all that stuff, they can't come through and
they-
develop on
they
that, or
can't
buy
use-
it from you?
Can't use it. It's
Part of the
It's-
house lots.
it's part of the house lots, it's required.
So that's why we
for
got to
them
get a
comply.
full-scale plan that shows us the
I'm happy to show you
lots.
that too, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's where it comes down, it's like a panhandle back here, and you see these areas are all, are used up by it. So even if we wanted to.
So is it nitrogen loading? Like, can you not have
Well, for-
impervious areas on it?
No, nitrogen loading means you can only have, if you have well and septic on the same lot, you've got a maximum amount of effluent of 440 gallons, per acre. It's actually per 40,000 square feet. And so, that's why these all are roughly, 2.75 acres, because that's what we need to get the 1440 that we need.
I just know
So-
in one other nitrogen loading easement, there was a question about impervious area. But I'm not sure that was just maybe written into it.
I think it's written into it,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do, you'll see stuff, some people will confuse the nitrogen loading issue with, with a zone 1 for a well. If this well.
Oh, I think it was a zone 1.
Yeah,
No, it was a nitrogen loading easement, but it was through the state, maybe not just through the local.
It's nothing I'm
Yeah.
aware of that doesn't,
Okay.
it's not something. So sometimes people will confuse the radius around a well, that's a community water supply, you need to own it, control it, and there's very limited things you can do within it, and impervious is one of them. But I'm not aware of anything on the nitrogen loading that has any kind of impact for impervious. Theoretically, it's, you could pave it all, but it's not what we're doing, so. but I'm not aware of that restriction. So that's the only things that we've talked about back here is you know, potentially a type of a community garden that, you know, could be there for the benefit of the residents. There was a ball field that was proposed. I don't know how it ever got in there. There was no parking or access. If you actually, you know, anyone goes down to Forbush and you see how many cars come and go, to have that going through a really narrow access for the subdivision, I didn't understand it. Plus, to do it, like, literally, there's a 25-foot cut back there to put it in. It didn't make any sense. So we would actually enjoy it if you said, you know, we really don't want to see anything back there, including a ball field, to help our argument. I don't think the ZBA was, you know, was hung up on it either, but, you know, if that's something that you guys don't want to see, we'll make sure that's communicated to the zoning board of appeals.
Does that tie into Powder Hill?
Only through the pipeline, I don't think it's a direct, I think that
There
there's a
was,
couple of landlocked pieces in between.
There was some questions of it. You know, I can come down with a full-size plan, we can look at it. We're open to access for trails. I think it's a benefit for everybody.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's like a New England Power parcel that's in there, and I think there's maybe a private one as well.
There is a
Landlocked.
New England Power that cuts through, but I know it's been voided in other sections. So, I mean, it's, you know, there's not going to be a power line through there.
Yeah, but I think they
because
may
lost
own some
pieces.
land.
They may, I think
Yeah.
adjacent to Freddy's, whether it's an easement. I think it might be an easement on his, but I think there are some blocks in, I know in Harvard with a property that I had, there was a, you know, it was just this
Yeah, and
weird
I do know they
landlocked
have some, but I
piece.
can't remember if it's on this piece, or
Yeah,
there is
I'm not sure.
another parcel down sort of near, between Houghton and Powder House. I know that they have a piece.
Yeah, behind me.
Yeah.
So per se, I don't have any issues with doing that, as long as we can work an agreement out on that back parcel
I'm sure
as
we can do
some kind of mitigation. My opinion.
I think I'd be opposed to amendment, just after hearing everything we're hearing and what we read.
Okay, so,
Should I make a motion?
yeah, I was gonna say, so I think you should probably, you know, formalize it just so that he feels confident going forward. And,
Yep.
you know, if there's a change in membership again, and then you were willing at once to consider it.
That's right.
Get us on a good night.
Yeah.
It's fabulous, you won't get that very often.
Just stopping at any point in time when I said to go off. Like, to make a motion to allow Craftsman from Sugar Road to amend the existing order of conditions rather than to submit a brand-new order of conditions. Anything else I need to add to that?
Okay, so I would just maybe seriously add, based on the conversations that we've had both in January and here tonight,
Yeah.
related to the improvements that they've made to the plan and honoring the protection of the resource areas and drainage.
Reducing the impact.
And
Put that in there.
and providing mitigation, as Lori says.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion.
No, you continue it.
Yeah, what she said, right.
So.
Do I have a second,
Yeah.
right? Can we-
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the consideration and mitigation will be addressed, and I'm sure any other, you know, concerns we'll be able to address and work the rest.
Now the wells are in, right? You have all the wells.
They're already, yeah, they're all in. We've got one new one we've got to put in up
Where?
here, but the ones that are actually
Yeah,
in the wetlands that are in the buffer zone are there. The other one that we're proposing is not in the resource area. So that's all done, and they come into a central hub right here. That's already installed as well.
Yeah.
The lines are already there, so we won't have to be doing any, you know, any digging to connect them or anything. So that was a nice bonus from our end, so quite frankly. That's about it.
It's a pretty site.
Yeah, we're excited. It's going to work out well.
Access to major highways.
Access to candy and ice cream.
That's it.
That's even more important.
That's it.
Our Rotary meets
All right.
every other Thursday morning.
What's that?
That's where our local Rotary Club meets, is in the
Oh.
candy store.
Oh,
really?
Every other Thursday morning.
Hey, you might get some new members out of that.
Yeah, that's right.
We go over and walk the neighborhood too.
That's right.
I'd love to.
Do you need to do a traffic study?
No, that was already evaluated before, and we're, the unit, the vehicle, the structures, the vehicle counts, the bedrooms are all reduced, so
Right.
anything that was evaluated before, we're substantially below it. And with the installation of the lights and stuff, since it's been done, it's, we really wouldn't, and even people think, 30 houses, it won't, there's really not a substantial impact when you look at how much is going up and down Sugar Road these days, so I don't believe the board will require, that's my opinion, but I wouldn't see why they would,
You're not gonna have
given the
two people
modifications.
every bedroom.
No. You're gonna have, half of these would be one or two people, more than half of these would be one or two people. I would say probably 3/4 of these would be just couples, whether they're younger or older. And some, single people, they're going to all be relatively, affordable, in today's market. It's still good enough money, but you can't buy anything. Trying to buy anything for $400,000 to $500,000 these days is, particularly that's new, is difficult and detached. You can get attached product in certain towns. But we're, optimistic the market is performing reasonably well these days. So hopefully keep at it for a little while longer and we'll get everything sold and built.
Okay. So
Thanks very
just
much.
be in touch about timing, so I'll let you know where we
Yeah, I'll
stand
keep you
with
posted on
meetings.
stuff. That sounds good. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Take care. Have a nice night. Have a nice Memorial Day. Take care.
Get us on a good night.
You haven't seen them in a long time. I think people didn't say.
It's all our main key points.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us an update on Pipeshire?
Sure, I have a quick one for that. So we have sent out the contract, it's been signed by all the parties. We had to do a notice of construction to submit to the State Office of Dam Safety, which they have 21 days to review. It essentially just says who the contractor's going to be, who the engineers are, what the project was. It's just kind of a formalizing of the construction information for them, including their permit that they've already given us that we've recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So it's, but anyway, they have 21 days from we issued that. So the schedule looks like it would, if we get all that signed, I've got it signed by the engineers, I've got the contractor coming in tomorrow to sign it, and then I can sign it on behalf of the commission. And then we'll submit that to the Office of Dam Safety, and looking at the schedule with what they've laid out in there, they would hopefully be able to start construction June 16th if they're ready to go. That would be the earliest. And then they have worked into that schedule for substantial compliance and then final final work, and that would bring us to around September 15th or 16th, I think I said. So hopefully it'll be done, over the summer, and we'll be moving on that project. And I think that's the main thing. We'll have a pre-construction meeting before everything starts to go over all the contract documents, and then we'll do a pre-construction meeting in the field for the orders of conditions and all that kind of stuff. So, as that's moving ahead, I can let anybody know if they want to join me. But I did, Erica and the town planner and the DPW superintendent agreed to sort of work as our in-house committee, to also make sure the project's moving on time and that we're paying the bills, as they bring them in.
Ronville, California.
Yeah, what's the CS one, Cancer or California? Where is it?
Fawn Hill.
The next
Land
line is
management
Hampshire.
Conservation area?
Fawn Hill Conservation Area, yeah.
Good.
Sorry, no punctuation in there. So we talked about, there was a property on Vine Hill where, and Janet, you'll be familiar with it, the person at Mass GIS had identified a parcel that looked like it was being mowed.
Oh, right, yes.
And so we were waiting for the conditions to be suitable to go out there. I sent a letter to the owners and said, this has come up, we'd like to come and visit it, and they said, fine, just, make arrangements. So really, I'm just at the point of, I need to send you out a doodle poll to get a time that we can go out and look at it. But I figure since people are starting to mow, pretty regularly, it would be good to get out there soon, so if they do need to stop someplace, then we can, get that established. So that's that one.
Do you have any good bills or correspondence sitting around?
Yes, I have a bunch of correspondence, and I have some bills I can send around while I'm saying other things.
Okay.
But basically, I've got a bill for the survey work that was done for the easements associated with Fifeshire, so going in on the common driveway and across the Odell's property. I have a training that I had not paid for Janet when she did the annual meeting. And then I have a couple for reimbursements for me, one just for a parking garage when I went to a DP meeting in Worcester, $3, and then I had to do some extra postage because our meter didn't work properly, so I'm just under supplies on that one. Some of the announcements. Last week I received a forest cutting plan for 283, I believe it is, Ballville Road, which some of you will maybe know as, it was Ken Swanton was the owner. He doesn't live in town anymore, but he was very involved with the town on the planning board, on the conservation trust for different years. Anyway, he tried to sell his property. He's moved to Harvard now, but when he tried to sell his property, he was looking to get like one buyer. It was an old farmhouse, and he really wanted to kind of keep it all one parcel. The market was really bad when he was trying to sell, and he wasn't able to find a buyer who had the same interest of keeping it whole. So he subdivided it into 3 lots, one with the existing house and then 2 others. And so the other day I received a forest cutting plan, and the forest cutting plan proposed that they were doing a short-term harvest, which means that the harvest is the main intention of the harvest is producing short-term income with minimal consideration given to improving forest condition, which often results in forest dominated by poor condition or low-value species. And they also indicated that there's a 1.5 acre area excluded, which is a land use change for a house lot. So kind of triggered in the minds of the reviewers that, okay, so there's houses that are going to be constructed on here, but they're filing a forest cutting plan. So they're trying to, it seems as though in the mind of at least some people that they may be trying to eat their cake and get it, or whatever it is, have the cake and eat it. So it's also entirely within priority habitat area. So it's been recommended that we consider sending a letter to the forester, the state forester, that the property, they should file a notice of intent to do the work, and that it shouldn't go through the forest cutting plan. Because basically, that they're claiming that they're exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act by filing the forest cutting plan with the state forester.
How is a forest cutting plan just different from, I'm clearing this so I can build a house? Like, what is a forest cutting plan supposed to be?
It is supposed to be that your intent is to continue foresting, and keep it for forest activity.
Not forest to put a house up.
Right. And so there's wetlands around it, and there's priority habitat, and so the position, I guess that I would suggest you consider is that this should be something we tell the state forester. We think it should be a regular notice of intent that's filed. That we review it the proper way. That it's not doesn't really meet the intent of a forest. Yeah.
How many acres is this?
There's no wetland crossings, but they're within 50 feet of the wetlands. They're removing white pine, red oak, black oak, white oak, other hardwood. Looking at 11 cords of wood.
This thing.
Acreage, is it on? Is it?
What was that?
Oh, 3.5, I think.
Okay, so if you own a piece of land and you want to cut the trees down, why do you only have to file for a forest cutting plan if it's?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is if you just own land and it's not protected with any chapter land, like it's not under forestry, which is one of the chapter lands.
Oh, so is this chapter?
No, this isn't, but I'm just saying, if you're just talking a regular parcel of land, if you didn't have any wetlands,
You can just cut it?
you could presumably just cut it.
Right.
But if you have wetlands and you want to not do a notice of intent, you can file a forest cutting plan, because
Oh, I
it's
see.
a kind of like a limited project,
So it's
like
an
agricultural
exemption, yeah.
use.
So it's like an exemption. Okay.
Yeah, it's not really an exemption, but you have to meet
Okay.
certain standards, by filing this, and so you just go a different route.
I see.
But, it's not intended to circumvent the notice of intent process when, it's not
Just
necessarily
build
just
a lot.
harvesting.
So you really
Right.
can't, you're clearing the land.
Right.
to-
So, anyway, that was the recommendation. I think we should probably follow that.
So so I just want to make sure I understand, who was this submitted to and who made these recommendations that you just?
Okay, so it's submitted to the state forester,
Yeah.
a woman named Laura Dooley, who has a very
Okay.
wide range of areas that she has to review for. Bolton's one of them. The plan preparer is a guy named Kimball Moore out of Brookfield, Mass. The landowner's Ken Swanton, and the conversation that I had was with the Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, who, when they also received the forest cutting plan, and when they looked at it, said, it's all priority habitat, basically what it says in the application, and they called me to say, what is the commission thinking about this? And I said, well, I just received it last week and I was gonna bring it to the meeting. So so we had the conversation this morning about, well, it's a lot of wood, it's a house lot, it doesn't really meet the intent of, forest cutting plan. And his recommendation was, you should send a letter to Laura Dooley if you don't think that it does.
Okay. Who's the one who said all the stuff about they're taking all the good trees and leaving the poor?
That's just what it says in the, on the form. There's two things. The landowner can sign this application as a long-term forest management plan, which is plan management of the forest to achieve one or more of the following objectives: produce immediate and maximize long-term income, enhance wildlife habitat, improve recreational opportunities, protect soil and water, and produce forest specialty products. Or you can check off short-term harvest, which was what I read.
So that's what they said? That's what
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what their objective was.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it doesn't mean we wouldn't necessarily approve the work, because they may be able to, do it without impacting the wetlands, but it seemed as though it was, that the forest cutting plan the intent of it was not, that they're looking to build on these lots.
Exactly.
Which Ken had told us that he was looking to do, but he hasn't been able to sell them, so, thus maybe the short-term income, which, I get that part, but, you could still get that and file a notice of intent, potentially, if you're not gonna have that impact. The other question that I had for you, or comment, or thing that I wanted to discuss was, and I don't know how many of you were familiar with this, when the solar panels went in out behind Bolton Orchards, and the Conservation Commission provided input to the planning board in their review, we had discussions about that. I think, Janet, you must have been on the commission. I remember maybe talking to you about it, about that they were gonna have to put a chain link fence around the entire 8 acres or whatever it is, compound or more. I forget how many acres the whole thing is. And that, the commission's position was that if the chain link fence was up off the ground sufficiently, wildlife could go under it, and they would be creating really a whole barrier to 8 acres of land, And anyway, when they installed the fence, they didn't keep it up. And so they're asking the planning board to waive that requirement. And the planning board's looking for our input on that, whether or not, we are satisfied or not. And so Erica sent me an email. The planning board would like to have the input of the Conservation Commission regarding the perimeter fence that was installed with the solar project. The fence was supposed to be constructed with a maximum 4-inch gap along the bottom for animals to freely move in and out of the site. However, it was not installed due to an oversight by the contractor. As you know, this was originally a recommendation of the commission that was included as a condition of the special permit. The planning board would like to know whether this gap should be waived.
Only 4 inches?
The maximum
What was
of
the maximum?
inches?
Yeah, I think the wording
They
didn't.
have to keep people out.
I think that I think our wording may not have been great, and I think the special permit wording wasn't great. And I think that the idea was, we wanted it to be as much as it could be, but the owners of the lot didn't want it to be too high because they didn't want to allow for small kids or people to get under it. So they had kind of a cap as to what they would allow it to be. And, you know, of course, I think we were looking for a minimum of, 4 inches or whatever, but they wanted a maximum of it. So at this point, there's places where it maybe is a little bit up, but there's places where it's completely kind of, I think, down to the ground.
I don't know that 4 inches would do anything anyway, would add significantly to the wildlife value.
Well, you don't think a turtle could get under 4 inches versus not having 4
Well, and
inches?
other things can get caught and get stuck. I mean, I don't know. It seems like
Between a rock and a
The
hard
thing
Imagine a
about this
bobcat
size
trying
is
to go
someone
under
across the
it.
road could get out.
Well, I'm not thinking of a bobcat, I was thinking of smaller critters, like I think it's all sandy
Yeah,
soils
but I'm
back
just
there that,
saying-
it's close to priority habitat for turtles.
Well,
I
it's
don't-
true. I mean, I agree in general that that area is like, it's sort of it's almost like a corridor between the whole Wilder Farm area and to
Yeah.
Bolton Flats.
I mean, other animals could obviously burrow, but if it was down to the ground, it's less opportunity to burrow, under it.
So what if we waive it? Does that mean the next one, we'll have trouble getting it in there?
Probably. I mean, if you don't think it's important now, why would you think it's important later? I mean, the site might be different. I mean, I don't see why it should be waived myself when it was a recommendation and it was agreed to, and just because the contractor failed to do it. To me, it's like, I mean, I made, a guy move his fence that wasn't exactly on the buffer zone line that, if that's where it showed it was supposed to be. I mean, you don't do it right the first time, then you go back and you fix it.
Why is it uneven? Is it just because of the ground?
I think there was some
Just poor construction.
erosion maybe too, like there's some areas that are a little bit softer,
It should be fixed.
because she had some other problems that they had to fix.
They should fix it.
Anyway, that's my recommendation, but what do you guys want to say?
I think if it looks like there's some places where they just forgot about it, then they should fix it.
No, I think the whole thing, basically, they didn't do it. I think there's a few places where it's a little bit higher than others, but it's not like they did it intentionally. I think it's just that that's how it's sort of worked out, either because of the other problems that they've had with their posts or their...
So it started out that way?
Started out not going in as was per the plan. There may be a few places that it's up above the ground, but that's not by design. It's just how it's worked out.
Well, I guess given the proximity to Bolton Flats, I guess it would be better to have the gap, although it's kind of disappointing that it's just 4 inches.
Well, we're not gonna get more than.
They're not gonna go
4
by
inches.
now, that's just,
Well, I mean, we gave our recommendation. We weren't there to argue the point, so I think, they took our recommendation to the extent that they felt they could. They heard the other side's opinion. I mean, sometimes that's why it's good to go to the meetings, so you can press harder.
I wasn't on the commission at the time, but I'm guessing there were some really good reasons why everybody decided it should be the 4 inches, and we should probably follow through with that.
Yeah, I'm afraid if we
Agreed upon
don't,
originally, then what's the point of putting
we
anything?
won't be
Right.
able to do it later if we think it's a good idea.
Okay.
how tall
Let's see.
is the fence?
That's pretty
It's
high.
gonna be 10 or 12 or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Is there ways to, clean out from underneath it?
I think he's got some other work to do as well, though.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just that. I think that there were some other spots where
Do
there's
we
some
need to take a
cracks,
look?
cement or other stuff. What's
I've
that?
gone up there.
Do we need to take a look?
I'm trying to think if there was a fence on the side.
That's certainly an option if you want to. I know I had pictures from the first time I'd been up there, but before the fence was in. I know Erica's got a lot of pictures that she's taken with the fence in, but, you know, if you want to say that you'd like to take a look before you, because you knew and you weren't on the commission, you know, that's fine too.
I mean, I've walked up there and taken a look. It's impressive. It's worth a walk up. It's neat to see.
Is it right behind the
You wouldn't
store?
expect that big hole.
Go behind the liquor store and just
You wouldn't
follow the
expect
path right
a
up.
big-
It's really neat. Yeah,
How
Dingo's
vast the
Liquors.
area it is
Yeah.
up there.
I mean,
Oh, it's not Bolton Orchard.
No, well, I mean, it's.
But sort of
it's
up behind there.
Bolton Orchards, but far enough behind that you're better off, if
It's
you park at
directly-
the liquor store and just walk right up.
It's
So when it
directly
used to be
across
Fire and
the
Wine?
sidewalk we
Yeah.
had last Tuesday.
Oh, there you go.
The house on 117 as you're coming down the street.
It's on the other side.
It's directly across the street from it.
It's across.
Yeah, so it's the old gravel pit
Directly
area.
behind the dump as well. If you ever go to the
Yeah.
dump, if you're, you know, you have the earth wall on the other side, you look down, it's.
So it's
you
behind
see the
it,
field.
what used to be Fire and Wine?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a nice path, there's a big car path that winds right up to it.
Okay.
Right,
From the
right.
liquor store.
Yeah, yeah, right
Behind
behind the
it.
liquor store, yeah.
Grab a bottle.
It's worth it, it's, yeah, well, we said for your walk, you're all set, yeah.
Okay, so then you'd like to take a look, Jim, before we
Yeah, I think-
provide any comments? Okay.
And just in case there's another part to this picture that
Yeah,
it
that's
isn't
fine.
obvious.
That's a good recommendation.
So I think I have to go now.
Thanks for coming.
Is there, like, I can make my email in case, like, I'd love to come to the next meeting. But I don't know if you're gonna do sidewalks or if it's gonna be here.
We didn't schedule any sidewalks tonight, so you wouldn't miss anything in between now and the next meeting unless something comes up, but I can certainly add you to the email. Do you want to,
I can just
yeah,
write it.
if you write it down on that, and then, as long as I can read your writing, fine. And then, do you have any questions though before you leave? I guess, do you want to?
No, I think I'm just gonna, like, keep attending meetings and just kind of start to, like, learn. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and what, I don't know if Lori's mentioned it, but, you know, we have a small training budget, and there's courses that you can take, and they're specifically designed for commission members, you know, so it's through the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions, and whether it's a fundamental course that they have, or it's part of their annual meeting, they have things that kind of go on throughout the year. They have things online, so there's lots of materials that can help you get up to speed a little bit more quickly, but definitely doing the site visits and, you know, looking at the plans and stuff like that is really the key to kind of getting an idea of what's going on. And then part of it's, I would just say too, is, you know, the whole beginning of the night typically is the wetland administration, and then we also have land management, so we didn't really get into the details of that stuff because we've been dealing with some of that for a while, but, you know, we do have a lot of land that we're managing, and then we have a lot of land that we'd like to protect. So we need people who are interested in doing that, you know.
I think I'll probably just drop off my email for now, and then I'll probably like, this meeting's going on, I'll probably press you for more, like, specific resources for me, like, to, like, go research myself.
Yeah, there is a handbook, both a digital handbook and I have some hard copies is, I mean, when you're ready to look at it, it's comprehensive, but it's almost like, you know, it's your go-to, like if you have this question about amending an order, if I had it here, that's what I would go to. And so I use it in the office a lot for stuff.
Does he have a copy of the bylaw, like the?
Well, the wetland bylaw is online, so if you went to the town Bolton website and then to the conservation page, our bylaw is online. And I think there might be a link to the Wetlands Act.
Protection Act. I would start with those, and then a really, really good introductory thing is Unit 1 of the, Carol mentioned the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners have these little educational workshops. It's like a 3-hour one, and it's a really nice introduction just to orient you on that.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And the meetings tend to go, we've been a little on the earlier side for most of the last couple of years, but we only had one meeting this month because of town meeting, and maybe we may or may not have double meetings in July and August, and so when that happens, we tend to get a bigger agenda, you know, so. And it's a busy time of the year, you know, but we try to keep the meetings up to reasonable hours, so that, because everyone has to function the next day.
Well, this is pretty fine by me usually, like, I mean, I got another temp job after I talked to
Did
you,
they?
so I'm working in Hudson in the factory, 7 a.m. to 3:30.
There you go.
So, new
Send your
job
schedule.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
busy.
He lives in Susan Miles' house, like there in the
Oh,
corner,
really?
across from Nancy Skinner's house.
Oh, yeah, oh, great.
Bolton Music School sign out from.
Yeah, I remember they were put the fence up.
Yeah.
Okay, so Max,
You know the houses, the
MACRAE
coordinates, she knows
@gmail,
that.
okay, got it,
Main.
thank you.
Max period, R period. Yeah.
Yes, yep, I have the periods.
I read.
All right, if for any reason you don't hear from me, my email's on
I
the
haven't
top,
seen
so.
them since
But
you've been.
I will get you on our list.
All right, great.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, nice to meet you all.
Haven't seen it and read them.
Carol, is Maxwell Pino still an associate member, or is
He is by
completely gone?
default, I mean, he hasn't asked not to be, he's still on our emails and so forth. I guess I did see him this spring, he came to one meeting when he had an opportunity to, and then he helped his niece doing some community service work, and so I talked to him a little bit then.
So, Roy, does he work at the farm?
He goes to college.
Oh, okay.
And he's studying chemistry.
Oh, okay.
So, he worked for us last fall.
He lives
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But his family owns the house across from where you remember the guy who came in with the goats?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
he-
why I
he-
associate with him now.
Well, he lives across the
That's
street,
across the street.
Oh.
but he's not the same guy. He did sort of have the same,
No, I knew it wasn't, he wasn't the same guy, but somehow I was associating him.
well, maybe you've seen him over there.
What?
Maybe you spotted him when you were over checking out goats?
So I just had one other announcement, I think. I just wanted to say that Leonard Engineering did do the quarterly inspection on the Fifeshire Dam, and they did not find any significant deficiencies. They did find one minor deficiency, which they observed where there was a wet area at the downstream toe of the dam, and a down tree at the right upstream slope from beaver activity. But they also noted that just prior to the inspection, there'd been about a half an inch of rain, so they considered it something minor. I think that's it for announcements that I have in my pile here. Oh, but, well, I guess under announcements, do you want to talk about the board membership? Because I didn't have that on the agenda, because I didn't know until Monday, really. Because I think the question was, Janet's had been doing the open space and recreation plan and not coming to the meetings. And right now, again, I'm not positive, I didn't look at the doodle poll before I came, but it looked like from what had been filled out, and did you do it, Lori? I think you had.
Yeah.
That it looked like we only had a quorum for one meeting in July and one meeting in August. So were you not going to be coming after July? That was really my question for you. Because usually you're later in the fall, but I know you've taken on so much more, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a hit and miss, because we open earlier now, and I do double duty now,
Yeah.
so
So maybe not now.
I do not in August. I usually have, but again, it's something like Mark's project that just come for that, and
Things that you've been participating in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just tough.
Well, I mean, I can go back to doing meetings. I didn't get a lot done here. Well, I have notes in the margin, but I never went and edited anything from the Word doc that I got. One of the issues is that I was working on the vernal pool stuff, which I have all together. We did find enough, I believe, to certify all of them, except that when we were out in the field, I didn't really know exactly where we were. I'm talking about not only with you, but with Susan Fly.
So this is over on Randall Road area?
The Road area, where the pipeline is
Yeah.
going to go through. So there were all these potential vernal pools, but they were never certified, so we were trying
I
to...
think I found that one of them may have been. I just found that
okay.
today, but.
Well, in any case, we got to this one, and we didn't realize it, but that these were two separate ones, and so, because they were sort of connected, and we only got data for that one. So the only thing potentially that we missed was that one up there.
And are you talking about, did you go to that one with Susan then?
Yeah,
Okay.
because you and I didn't get there.
Mhm.
The other thing is, it's really big, and I'm not sure it dries out. There was a lot of vegetation coming up, you know, in it, so I guess that supports the idea that it must dry out. It can't be that deep out in the middle. It's a big, it looks like a pond.
Well, you can have vernal pools within vegetated wetlands. So, I mean, it could be that it's on the edge enough.
I guess, I don't know. And there was a lot of egg masses and a lot of wood frog tadpoles out there too. But we did get, I think we got them all, except for this down here. I didn't even pay attention to that little thing, but I don't even know if that's in the same, if that counts in the same.
Yeah, so I think, Janet, probably you and I just need to sit down together sometime to go
Yeah.
over what you have and putting it together. I did go to a workshop and have the online form and have, you know, sort of the process, but I haven't done anything with either my pictures or your pictures or the mapping at this point. And I feel like the last couple of weeks have just been crazy in the office, but I'm hoping there'll be a breather so that we can move that part along.
Okay, when you certify, what do they want? Do they want physical photos with a stapled?
Well, they have an online form now, so I think you can upload things.
Okay.
But I can't tell you tonight at this moment, because even though I went to the workshop, I can't remember the details that well. I have it all right next to the computer.
I guess we can talk about it another time, but it might be easier, rather than me mailing you a bazillion photos, for you to just mail me the form or whatever, and I can just
Yeah.
certify them.
Yeah, that would be fine too.
That might be easy.
Yeah.
So if I were to continue with the open space plan, I think I would need to have a meeting with you once a week to make sure that we have like a set thing to get done. But I am also willing to forego that and come back to meetings for now. I feel like we're desperate enough.
I think we might be desperate.
Might be desperate.
But it's great that you're working through the open space recreation plan, because that's another thing we're desperate to get done to a certain extent.
Yeah, but we need bodies,
Yeah, I know.
especially since Laura's gonna go.
We need 4 per
Oh, we
quarter,
would only do
Yeah.
4 of us.
Yeah, so it's gonna be tough.
so we need one of you guys.
And we all need to make it.
Well, and we need to, I did send,
We've gone through this before.
yeah, we've gone through it before. I did send a notice to the newspaper after I got Bob's notice and said, you know, I'm down 2 people, can you fit this in the paper? You know, but I sent the same one that I sent in the past, which was, you know, you're looking to do, you know, learn more about the town, you know, the 4 fun facts or whatever, you know, and that you could be an associate as well. You know, and just hope to generate people who are interested.
Okay. And a while back, we had mentioned it might be possible to pay somebody to do the open space plan. Maybe we should revisit that idea.
Well, we don't have any money in the budget for that, for this year, so if we don't get anywhere, then we're gonna, maybe that's the thing is, you know, come next January, we need to do that. No. I can start looking into that, but, yeah, I would agree that there, you know, there does probably need to be some sort of time scheduled so that, you know, either you meet with your questions or, you know, you meet with your progress and you know, you meet and say, this is what I need from so-and-so next, you know, so that we just keep on track. But I guess I would agree that I think we probably need bodies and we need people who are, you know, can be dedicated to.
I'm gonna try and recruit my neighbor, the architect, who can obviously read plans.
Mhm.
Recruit your neighbor anything.
No, I think he'd be a good one.
Any.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that I'm still on target to have a meeting sometime next month to form a trail committee of people. I mean, several people who have sort of expressed interest in the commission also really decide that they're more interested in sort of the land management aspect of it. But maybe there'll be some people who come out of that after getting more involved, you know, that realize that there's a lot to do, you know, so we'll see.
Does Bob have any thoughts of coming back eventually? Or-
I would imagine it depends on how the pipeline
Would
project
be after
goes.
2018 is my guess.
Yeah.
It won't be a quick project.
Oh, yeah,
No.
okay.
But that's their deadline.
Then the timeline.
We should live so long.
So my understanding is that the selectmen are still trying to get a meeting together and that they're trying to get dates. They're trying to get dates that they can have the person that from Tennessee Gas come and speak. And that's sort of been the holdup at this point, is coming together on a date. And yet I, know that from, and I don't remember what I've sent out to you guys, so tell me if I haven't sent it to you. Did I send you the Mass Land Trust letter? Where the Mass Land Trust sent a letter to this, I think it was to Governor Patrick, saying, there's a lot of conservation land that's, would be impacted by this project, and we don't support,
Yeah, I think I saw
Did
it.
I?
I seem to remember seeing that. I don't know if you sent it, but I wonder if it was in.
Okay.
Oh, I might have seen it as part of the
Local
MAC
or
stuff.
something,
What's that?
or is it Bolton Local or something like that?
Okay, well, anyway, there is that such letter, and then I have a letter from Mount Grace Land Trust that I just got last week, that is a really well-written letter that also, says it's similar sorts of things, but the importance of the land, and brings, I'm trying to remember if it brings out some questions, but there's, I think that we haven't spent time really developing questions that we want to have, and that maybe at the next meeting, we need to think about doing that, having some sense of questions that as a Conservation Commission we want to ask. One of the questions that's come up in conversations I've had with people is that there's land that's directly adjacent to the conservation land over here in Randall Road area that has conservation restriction on it. Now, if it has a conservation restriction on it, maybe can they take the land as they claim they can take through eminent domain, but what happens to the restriction? Is it still restricted? That says that you can't do X, Y, and Z? I mean, I don't know that goes away, so there's that kind of a question. And then there's definitely some lands that are in chapter land now, and so there's a whole question about valuation of that, so does that mean, and that's not necessarily the commission's, but it's an important question. If you are gonna pay somebody to take their land out of chapter, do they have to pay the taxes? And when does that start? There's interesting things about lands that are either protected permanently or that lands that might potentially be protected because they're in chapter. And then there's all the wetland stuff, in the vernal pools and this endangered species habitat, and how that gets honored or not. I talked to a circuit rider at DEP this week, and she hadn't really heard a whole lot about it, but she had heard from another agent that it had been coming through their town. And that was the other thing I was going to say, that so there's been some very big meetings in some communities, like there was and I don't remember if I sent you stuff at Pepperell, maybe 300 people or so, and I think Drake had a really big meeting. I've talked with, if you remember, Matt Morrow, the environmental consultant for the PACES. He, as a wetlands consultant, works for some other communities that are also going to be on this lateral line, and he wanted to talk to the commission, and they're interested in sort of, us all, what are we getting for information, and where are we in the process, and, should we all be sort of teamed together in this effort of, protecting the conservation land. So while it feels still early in the stages for us, I'm told, they keep plodding along, and their timetable keeps moving. So they're continuing to send letters to people, and people aren't responding, or people are responding and saying no, and that's setting them up to do their next step, which is to go to the DPU.
Well, the reading I did.
Yeah, you did quite a bit.
Yeah, that's their whole thing. It's divide and conquer, which I almost want to pester the selectmen, if they're not going to come out to answer your questions, just have a meeting, have the town come. Because their questions are basically going to be a sales thing, but they kind of want to get as much as they can before you make a concerted effort to say, no, as a town, we're saying, no, you can't do this.
Right.
Stop. Stop sending the letters, stop everything. We're not allowing it in the town. Not saying we'd go that way. But that's the whole thing. If you can organize a town and make an effort, you can bring it to a stop.
Is that what we want to do anyway? And two, is that a reasonable thing to try to do?
Well, I'd say whether we want to do it, or what, let the town decide, let everybody decide. Half the people in town don't even know there's a gas line coming in, which is their own fault.
Yes, it needs to be a raised level of awareness.
Right.
But, I mean, our best chance to have them not do something harmful is to suggest something that's less harmful.
Well, like alternative routes,
Yes.
not in town.
Someone else's town.
Well, there's some routes that,
Right, right.
we talked about it, there's an extension already that goes through Clinton. Or I think Brian might have brought up, like, why wouldn't you go along the highway?
Yes,
Or,
exactly.
Well, did
That's
anybody,
perfect.
there's also, did anybody get the handout at
That's
the
how we
town
go.
meeting?
Yeah.
There's something,
Yeah.
they were proposing changes in the way, I'm not a technical person at all, in the way like the gas was stored and processed or whatever that would make it so that they would be more available without having this line. I mean, there's an argument to be made.
Oh, they can improve their efficiency by 10% if they fix their existing lines. But it's very expensive to fix their existing lines, so they'd rather put in new ones. They lose about 10% of the gas they're pumping through just to leaks, and not unsecure leaks,
I see.
but just general leaks and seepage from old
There are
lines.
even additional things they could do. other than
Yeah.
fix the
10% is not going to get us very long.
No, but if
Well,
you think of all the gas they pump through the state, that 10% is this
According to
entire
this
spur line.
handout, I hope-
Entire
I might
spur
still
line that
have
they're
it.
building.
Well, we put the handout together.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was all like a stuff,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you look at the way the population is increasing and the percentage that we can want to convert from other sources, it should be more than 10% that they'll need.
Sure. Oh, no, without a doubt. I mean, well, the Ashby, who kind of put it together as a town, it was interesting because they were saying, we need multiple, it's been around, multiple different energy, multiple different ways of providing energy for the town. They said, Massachusetts now moved, in 2010 were the highest solar per capita. We finally passed California. No, 2013. It was recent. It was just like a year and a half ago. But they were saying, look, with solar and wind, like a lot of people in the state are doing a lot to really advance that. We've become the #1 state per capita. Yeah, we want to see gas, but not to the extent that they want. Of course, now with Ashby, they wanted to go through there so they could export it overseas, which every single economist in the world says is basically going to shoot the price through the roof. Like their whole, you see all lovely commercials like it's cheap, it's American, it's clean. The cheapness, once they can export it, it becomes a world commodity. It's going to shoot right up like oil.
If you live in Europe
Yeah.
and you have to buy it from the Russians,
Yeah.
We may want to help them buy it from us, even if it costs us something.
Right. But this would just be a spur line to Worcester. And with no thoughts of hooking up the town either. It was just, we want to take your land. You're going to have to pay for it. It comes out of your taxes to help the people of Worcester, which is fine. Nothing against them.
I think the best shot is come up with a better route.
No, it's not planned.
So when they come to make a presentation to the selectmen, is the plan to schedule that in a place that will hold a lot of people?
Yes.
Okay, so like the school? the
Yes,
high
I think
school?
they're looking at like
Okay.
Florence Sawyer Auditorium.
Okay, and they'll announce that?
Yes. And so I think Brian's right in terms of the timing, that, and maybe someone needs to suggest it to the selectmen, that, the meeting's gonna happen, because they're gonna keep moving their schedule along, whether they come or not,
In fact, I wonder if it should be a state policy that they prefer to run these things along existing transportation corridors. And this is an avenue worth pursuing. I mean, some of us have access to state officials.
To it.
Well, certainly, we want the state officials to come to the meeting. So, as soon as we have that date too, we want to have representatives come.
When is it likely to be this month?
Well, they were hoping June, but they haven't been agreed upon as of, the selectmen were meeting tonight, so I just had asked if they had anything, and it hadn't been.
And I still, whether it's may be immaterial or not, it still bugs me. But the CEO of Kinder Morgan is the former COO of Enron, who has, either he knew what was going on, or he's incompetent, but he's not really competent for like public trust. It's one striking out with
Enron is
me.
like the New York Yankees of energy.
Right, but
They're the bad guys.
either he knew they were cooking the books, or he was the COO and didn't realize they were cooking the books. Regardless, I don't think he's a person you can trust with a huge public asset being turned over, and when he says, no, we're gonna maintain it properly, I don't trust you, you're a proven liar.
Thursday night is Kate Hogan's office hours. and all that. I was planning on going anyway.
Well, definitely bring it up.
Okay.
It's worth it.
Yep.
Do you know if the Tennessee gas pipeline people have the ability to override state rules and say, it doesn't matter what the state says, we don't care about the state of
No, well,
Massachusetts, we have federal.
Yeah.
They
well, I
will
would
eventually go to
imagine-
federal.
Right.
And that will override?
I do
any
not
state
know.
law?
I do not know. It would be
So-
interesting in this case to see, because it
How's
is
it
just a
working out for
spur line.
Keystone?
Yeah. There is some help that we can have too. A former commission member's very familiar, her husband is very familiar with the whole process. And so I'm going to try to get in touch with that person and set up some time that, maybe we can have some, so either as a different meeting or, part of this meeting, so that the public has a better sense of, you hear it from one side, this is what has to happen, this is what's going to happen, but then, it might be, that we also need to know some of the alternatives. But I do think it's important to keep in mind, what these other towns are trying to do as well, and it seems as though there's been some momentum of Ashby and Pepperell and Dracut of being vocal and concerned, and I think that along our lateral line, we need to get together with these other towns, Berlin and whether it's Northborough or whoever else. I have to figure out where the line's going, but to find out if they're having meetings and, if they need people to attend those meetings or to get answers, ask the questions. If they're not getting answered, that's the other thing, is that you could ask the question and the answer might come, and not be fully answered. It might be, oh, yeah, well, we will look into that, So, I think, do we have a couple other quick things? We had the minutes, I only did the minutes of the first meeting in April. No, I can't. I don't enjoy doing that.
So-
Whatever happened to Tim Kastner's project at Bond Hills?
I think he said he was probably going to get back to it this summer,
Oh, okay.
so I
nothing happened
expect
at the
that.
time I was gone.
No, I had some communication with him, but nothing recent.
So just make a motion quickly to approve the minutes of April 15th, 2014.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I had originally had on the agenda an appointment for Roy Paulson. If you remember, there was a small parcel of land off of Burnham Road, between Burnham Road and 495, that we think was probably pretty much just wet. And his father has died, and he wanted to give it to the Conservation Commission. And we talked about trying to get out there, and it just, a combination of things. One, it was originally, it's like, well, we can't go out there once, it's completely underwater because we can't see anything. And then we thought we would maybe get out, and I think we talked about it late winter, and then we got snow, and so we weren't really gonna see a whole lot. And then I really just didn't pursue a time this spring. I don't know whether I ever felt like there was a time that was right, but between trying to get a doodle poll out or whatever, it just didn't happen. I told him that. So he felt like, he really just wants to know whether the commission wants to pursue this or not, and whether they're interested. And I said, well, if you want to come in and talk to them, then that's, maybe the next step for you. And so he had thought about doing that, but then canceled. So I don't know really how to move it forward. There wasn't a butter on Burnham Road who said we could go through their property. I just don't know what you want to put into it in terms of, whether they want to visit it, whether you want them to come in.
Well, when you say gift, is he looking to sell it to the town, or it's?
No, I think they're looking to give it to the town,
I see.
like as a
So
gift.
it's a town
So what
donation.
part of the reason we wanted to look at it is because we don't want to take anything that might have been dumped on or
I
has,
see.
contamination or anything. So that was, and I just don't know the area at all.
I mean, I
So
think it
what-
makes sense to look at it,
Yeah.
because it's red contiguous with Cranberry Meadow, and it's a wetland habitat, great habitat.
So
Why not?
try to pursue looking
Sure,
at it.
why not?
Okay.
If it's a gift.
you think it's walkable if it's that wet?
I really don't know. I mean, I talked to the neighbor last fall, and, I mean, I think they thought, well, you can look from our yard, but I don't know how far you're gonna get,
Oh,
you know?
wow.
We can wear our thigh highs.
Yeah.
Studio living?
Yeah, now you need everything.
I'll take a boat.
Okay, so I'll try to work something out for that. I think that's all I had, right?
It's everything on the agenda we actually approved.
Oh, this is meetings, June
Close enough.
30th.
So, well, I just have, I guess, one other question just related to the chairing of the meetings then. Like, it was great Brian stepped up to do that tonight. I know when Janet was doing some of it, she was coming in to meet with me. So for me, it would be helpful to know, like, are we gonna have, you know, a chair that I can go to, or a temporary chair, or, you know, would I meet with whoever is willing to do it on any given night, which I'm happy to do as well, but I just need to time that, you know, in to my
I'm willing
schedule.
to do it and meet with you beforehand. I can't do it without meeting with you. I really need to go over this so I understand what I'm talking about
Yeah.
somewhat.
And I don't know, Brian, do you want to do it as well, or do you want to?
No, I mean, I'm happy to let somebody else do it. I was gonna say we could rotate,
Okay.
well, I wasn't even, you know, just even rotate through a different commission, anybody who was willing to. But I did the same thing, I need to sit down with you,
Yeah.
which I kind of go through.
Yeah, and it's easier for me to have at least one point person, not that I mean, the chair is never supposed to really be the person who makes any decisions one way or another, but at least if I could say, you know, do you think I should put this on the agenda to bring it to the, you know, the whole board, or is this, you know, it's just nice to have a backup. So, I know when Bob took on chair, you had sort of said you would be a vice.
Right.
So did the whole board talk about that? I can't remember. Had we talked about
Well,
that?
then that was at the same time I was going to do the open space.
Yeah.
So that never happened.
Okay. All right, well, so let's try to work it between the two of you, at least for now. If for some reason one of you can't be at a meeting and we have a quorum, you know, we're able to meet, then, you know, work with whichever, you know, is able to come in advance.
I'm usually racing to get here at 7 o'clock, so.
Yeah. Well, I guess that, I mean, that's always open for discussion too, if 7:30 is better, but, I mean, I know some boards meet at that point, it just makes it a
7
later
worked
evening.
out better only because we were going till 10, 11, 12 o'clock
Right,
at night. and
right.
So we switched it to 7.
Yeah. But the daylight hours are so much longer, it's hard for you at this time, yeah.
Well, now that I'm going to be coming to meetings, would it be possible to have 2 meetings in July and 2 in August?
I don't know, did you
Because-
fill out the doodle poll? Maybe not. Well, the first meeting in July, I think, was July 1st, which pretty much everybody said they weren't going to be able to make.
They were not going to.
Yeah,
I won't be in North America then.
yeah.
So it'd be challenging.
But Janet, we can look at the other dates.
Because I'm thinking that if we met more often, maybe we could start meeting at 7:30. You know, the meetings wouldn't be as long if we meet more often.
There's still a lot.
Yeah, I don't know that they get any shorter
No,
necessarily.
no,
but-
yeah. No.
You fill up the time.
Yeah. You just stay later.
Well, whatever.
But we should look at the dates and see whether we could have, if we are able to get 2 meetings maybe in August, if not July, or if there were some alternate dates that I didn't put out there. The other thing actually was that the planning board was willing to meet with us on June 3rd, which we had talked about forever, trying to get a meeting together with them. It looks like, you know, we've got through and are getting through, you know, some of the stuff that we continued tonight, but I know we have at least 2 new hearings. Actually, what did I say? 3. We have 3. With fire ponds, so the fire department's coming in, that's just a request for determination. I've got the Smith property, which the Conservation Trust has filed to tear down the buildings and open up the stream channel, so that's gonna be a fairly big project to review. But the initial meeting might not be that much. And it might be interesting for the planning board to hear that one even, who knows?
I would think that whole stream pond is fully lined with stone walls, no?
I think it is, I think they're planning to open it.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? Oh, and then Pace for his, just lot 4, that, which, it showed grading in the buffer zone, and I said, well, why are you showing grading in the buffer zone? Why can't you pull it back and stay out of the buffer zone with it, for the house, anyway. So that's before, so those are the 3 new ones. So what are your thoughts in terms of having a planning board? Does it seem like it would be, too much for you for June 3rd to have them come? We were going to talk to them about a variety of things. We wanted to talk to them about changing their bylaws to require the boundaries of the open space be something in their regulations that they require the developer to do. We wanted to talk about, gosh, I had a list, I didn't bring it tonight. At one point, we started to talk about whether the open space and the phosphid bylaw should be following more of the state open space bylaw, which has much more open space provisions required, but it's an as of right bylaw rather than having to go through the subdivision process. I don't know how many of you were involved in that discussion, but we were talking about that. I can send you a list of some stuff that we sent to them, saying, we'd like to get together and talk. But it had been kind of agreed upon with the planning board that, once or twice a year, it'd be nice to have a mixed meeting and talk about different issues, how we're both handling things. Again, whether it's, stormwater drainage, or land protection.
I personally don't like the idea of meeting with them June 3rd, if that's going to be the first meeting. And I'm just getting back up to speed.
Well, will there be enough time at the June 3rd meeting? Because it sounds busy already.
I think it'll be pretty busy,
Yeah.
myself. But I hate to put it off
Yeah,
because there's never going to be a good time.
because that seems like it could be a meeting on its own, just with the
Yeah.
planning board.
Well, I sent you out some dates, and there were some, I think that there was at least one alternative date from our regular Tuesdays.
Well, now, was Bob the conflict on some of these?
You mean about being able to meet?
Yeah.
Not having a quorum, you mean?
The fact that we could only meet once in July and once in August, because we couldn't get enough people together,
Yeah,
was one of the people who couldn't come Bob.
I don't know. I mean, probably at least one of them. But whether Janet can come or not, I'm not sure whether that makes a quorum yet or not. We're gonna look at that. So, all right, I'll try to revisit some of the dates, but basically, they were willing to come to one of our meetings. I gave them our upcoming meeting dates. I'd sent you out a poll and had said, spring meetings and meeting with planning board. And this was the date that they said that they could come, so. Anyway, I know nobody's.
I don't know if there's ever going to be a good date.
Yeah, that's what I
If this actually works for them, and I'm sure they run into the same thing too, where, there's.
Well, Janet, why don't I talk to you a little bit more about
Okay.
the agenda? I'll get the agenda worked out a little bit and talk to you about the dates of other meetings that you might be able to meet that we could then have a quorum, and see if it seems better just to have the meeting and work through it,
Okay.
or put it off. Okay, we will let you know. I'm shutting down.
You are shutting down?
Yeah.
Wait, before we sign up, while we're still live, we should thank Robert Cohn for his many years of service,
Oh,
right,
yes.
officially?
Second.
Yeah, right.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye. And that officially closes the May 20th meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission.